Chapter 656. Long Ting has an ancient spirit treasure, and her talent is far inferior to yours. The reason why I'm trying to rope her in is that I hope she'll be more obedient to my commands after entering the primitive secret realm. Oh, Brother Chen Lin, I'll do my best to help you. My current combat strength is no worse than the average disciple of the Sacred Hall. Okay. Chen Lin nodded with a smile. He sighed inwardly. Such an inexperienced girl was really easy to deal with. Women didn't like good men. It was not difficult for him, who had always been shrouded in the halo of a genius, to conquer a woman. Even in the Sacred Hall, although he was not among the top, he was still one of the best. If he could mingle with many talented girls, it would naturally be better for him when he confirmed his relationship with them in the future. Whether it was Long Ting or Pan Donglu, as long as he cultivated with them, the benefits would definitely be abundant. But there was no doubt that Long Ting was more tempting to him. However, after meeting Long Ting in the primitive secret realm, Yi Futian had done some research. Some of the information was not considered a secret on the Ying planet. Long Ting seemed to have a confirmed relationship with someone, and Yi Futian had paid attention to that person before. Coincidentally, he had the same name as the eye-catching young man just now. Chen Lin didn't care. He didn't think the two of them were the same person. Chen Hao was just a genius from a small planet on the Ying planet. Although he had made a name for himself in the vast universe galaxy in the preliminary test, he had been quiet for nearly 3 years because of the information he had received. Moreover, there was basically no chance of survival in the arranged battle in a few years. Even if he hadn't received this information, Long Ting still had her primordial Yin body. As long as he succeeded in poaching her, it would be a skill. Long Ting rejected the invitations of Mo Weiwei and the others to go to their sects and families. She was like a cheerful bird, excitedly heading to the drifting cloud restaurant. Beep beep beep. Brother Hao, I'm coming. Room 1102. I've told you. Come here directly. Chen Hao looked at Long Ting's image and said. Although the two of them had kept in touch ever since they stepped out of the Ying planet, and Long Ting had secretly visited Chen Hao once, today was the first time that Chen Hao had met Long Ting. After nearly 3 years, seeing the beautiful Long Ting appear in front of him again, that feeling was completely incomparable to a simple image. At that time, if it wasn't for the fact that there were so many people in the hall, whether it was Chen Hao or Long Ting, it probably wouldn't have been so simple. Phew. After cutting off the connection, Chen Hao exited World 2 and let out a long sigh. He was actually trembling slightly. One could only imagine how excited he was right now. This was definitely not due to the effect of the second pill. Instead, it was due to the excitement in his heart. A man and a woman passionately in love, even if they had not broken through the last layer of the membrane, had truly accepted each other in the depths of their hearts. Not to mention Chen Hao. Even the sage would not be able to suppress the excitement in his heart when they met again after nearly 3 years. Similarly, Chen Hao would not suppress his feelings in his heart. Taoism was natural. Chen Hao, who had decided to return to his true self, did not simply appear in his true form to restore his true self. True self, from the inside to the outside, was the same on the inside and the outside. It contained not only the true identity, but also the release of the soul and the great freedom of the true self. At the very least, under normal circumstances, he would never suppress his emotions. Knock, knock, knock. As expected, there was a knock on the door. Chen Hao rushed to the door and opened it directly. At the same time, without even sensing anything, he opened his arms and hugged her. Ah, sir. It seemed that he was hugging a warm and fragrant jade. However, her sudden exclamation, as well as the touch and smell that came from her, made Chen Hao's face black lines. He suddenly let go of her. How could he do this? He was an expert in the Earth celestial stage. How could he do such a crazy thing? Impulsiveness was really the devil. I'm sorry, Chen Hao said awkwardly. It's okay. Sir, your friend is here. Downstairs, she had a dispute with someone downstairs. The young and beautiful waitress of the restaurant was blushing. Her heart was trembling, and she stammered. She had a dispute with someone? Who was it? Chen Hao asked, frowning. She's also a beautiful girl. She's also a disciple of the Divine Palace. You go and have a look. I hope Sir won't let them fight. Thank you. Okay. Hiss. Chen Hao directly turned into a stream of light and disappeared from where he was standing. The young female attendant, who had been hugged by the rash Chen Hao, stared in a daze at the place where Chen Hao had disappeared, unable to come back to her senses for a long time. If only I could become his woman. A girl who had reached the peak of the later stage of the human celestial stage at such a young age would definitely be among the super geniuses on the Wuxia star. However, in the East Flow city of the vast universe star, she was an ordinary cultivator. Even a fool like Chen Hao could see that he was a super genius. To girls like her, he was definitely a fatal attraction. Unfortunately, she knew that she had only been hit in the waist by Qing Chun. A monstrous genius like Chen Hao did not belong to her world at all. Hiss, 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 hiss. In the restaurant's hall, the wind was blowing. Two powerful auras and pressure collided invisibly in the air, enveloping every inch of space in the hall. The gazes of the two beautiful girls were like two sharp treasured swords as they stared at each other. One of the figures was naturally Long Ting, who had just arrived. The other figure was wearing a blue dress. Their long hair was fluttering under the surge of their auras. Their clothes were fluttering, and the curves of their two graceful and exquisite bodies were fully displayed. The surrounding cultivators automatically scattered in all directions, forming a circle around them. They stared at the two beautiful girls with burning eyes. The disciples of the Divine Palace. One of them had a majestic blood chi and a powerful physical strength that shocked everyone. The other had a sword principle will that bloomed in her beautiful eyes. It was as if she had let everyone see a scene of destruction. Obviously, both of them were only at the peak of the later stage of the Earth's celestial stage. However, the aura that they exuded at this moment shocked all the cultivators at the peak of the later stage of the Earth's celestial stage. Both of you, a middle-aged master of the Heaven celestial stage, who was obviously the manager of the Drifting Cloud restaurant, stood awkwardly between the two girls. Perhaps, both of you are Mr. Chen's people. Calm down. Calm down. If the two of them were really going to fight, even if he had the ability to stop them, he would not dare to stop them. They were the high and mighty disciples of the Divine Palace. He, a Heaven celestial, was nothing. If he angered any one of them, not to mention him, even the Drifting Cloud restaurant would suffer. Fortunately, the astute him had sent a voice transmission to the young waitress from before to inform Chen how at the first moment the two of them started to confront each other. With the experience of a few thousand years, although he did not know the inside story, he could faintly guess that these two stunning genius girls were very likely rivals in love that he had never met before. Moreover, one of them was ordered to come by Chen Hao, and the other came by following and ambushing. But coincidentally, the two of them came to the restaurant at the same time. Coincidentally, they said they were looking for someone at the same time, and neither of them said the other's name. However, they used their true essence to condense the other's appearance. More coincidentally, the condensed illusory figures were exactly the same. Therefore, although the two of them had paid attention to each other, they did not pay attention to each other. But now they directly looked at each other, and it became the current confrontation. Who are you? And who are you? I am Long Ting. It really is you. You still haven't answered me. Who are you? Your aura is very strong. I can't suppress you. But you can't suppress me either. Let's both stop at the same time. The two of them communicated through voice transmission. Shameless. I don't remember him knowing any temple disciples. Long Ting saw that the other party avoided answering and frowned slightly. The mark on the other party's chest was clearly the mark of a temple disciple, but the other party had changed his aura and appearance. Originally, when the other party condensed the illusory figure of Chen Hao, her first reaction was to think that the other party was Bailey Ningbing. Because of this, Long Ting exploded with intense anger and battle intent from the start, wishing that she could immediately beat this bastard up. How could a person be shameless to such a level? It was fine that he followed her the last time, but now he followed her again. Did he think that she was easy to bully? But under her aura, the other party's aura suddenly soared. Although he still changed his aura, It made Long Ting understand that the person in front of her was definitely not Bailey Ningbing. But it was hard to stop halfway, because the other party's aura was obviously trying to suppress her. No matter who the other party was, he was here for Chen Hao. How could she be suppressed? And so, the two of them competed with their auras. You can stop, but tell me your name first. Long Ting did not hide anything, and her aura soared again. Even if I tell you, you won't know him. You have to tell me even if you don't know him. You really won't stop? Many people are watching. Ah, he's here. Ah. The two terrifying auras had already tangled together and completely suppressed the other party. Although the two of them had not made a move, there was no doubt that the arrow was already on the bow. Unless the two of them withdrew their aura at the same time, if either of them withdrew their aura alone, they would receive a backlash from the other party's aura. This was like internal force experts. Although they did not move, they had already entered the stage of a battle of internal force. They could either withdraw their aura at the same time, or start the battle immediately. When Chen Hao heard the female attendant's report, he instantly thought of that crazy woman, Bailey Ningbing, so he came here in anger. But when he saw the figure facing off against Long Ting, he almost fell to the ground. How was this possible? Chapter 657. Although the other party had completely changed her aura and appearance, and even ordinary acquaintances would not be able to recognize her. If Chen Hao could not recognize her, then he should just find a piece of tofu and knock himself to death. Not to mention this brother's abnormal fiery golden eyes. Just the familiar style of the blue dress could blind Chen Hao's titanium alloy eyes. Not to mention, at this moment, the surging aura was releasing a powerful destructive sword essence. Just that. How could she appear here? When did she become so strong? How did she become a disciple of the divine temple? This aura, this advancement. Even Chen Hao, who thought he was quite awesome, had to cover his face in shame, speechless to see his lover again. More importantly, how did the two of them get into a conflict? This did not make sense. The one in the blue dress was none other than Chen Shui. Cough cough. Chen Hao's face was filled with black lines. He looked left and right, and then under countless gazes, especially when the two girls raised their chins at the same time and snorted at the same time. He directly faced the mountain-like aura and pressure, and forcibly inserted himself between the two of them. Let's go up and talk. Misunderstanding. It's definitely a misunderstanding. Both of you let go. Chen Hao transmitted his voice at the same time. The two of them knew that at this time, they could no longer continue, so they could only withdraw their aura and pressure at the same time. But neither of them transmitted their voice to Chen Hao, and stood still in the same place. Their charming faces were slightly tilted, staring at Chen Hao, waiting to see what he would do. Without a doubt, once a woman competed, she would definitely not let go of any details. Who would you approach first? Who would you pull first? Who would you appease first? Haha. Hiss. How could the wise and mighty Chen Hao let the two girls find trouble with him over such small details? As a result, the two hands formed from true essence directly elongated, grabbing the two little hands one by one. Then, with a pull, the two of them flew to his side in the air, firmly holding on to his left and right. Soon after, they quickly walked into the restaurant. Chen Shui didn't say anything and let Chen Hao hold her, but Long Ting on the surface he didn't flip out, but he grabbed Chen Hao's hand. His powerful physical strength directly increased by several times. He grabbed Chen Hao's hand, and the bones in Chen Hao's hand started to crack. Only the bones in Chen Hao's hand were close to being crushed into powder. How could he not be angry? Just from Chen Hao's words and his reaction, Long Ting knew that the beautiful girl in the blue dress who had changed her aura was definitely Chen Hao's lover. But she did not know. As a disciple of the temple, how could she not be angry that Chen Hao hid it from her? When did they meet? Who was this person? She did not even have the slightest bit of information. But this person was in the divine palace just like her. If it was anyone else, under the circumstances where they thought they knew all of Chen Hao's secrets, they would also be upset to suddenly discover that Chen Hao had hidden so much from them. However, Long Ting was only throwing a tantrum and did not directly flip out. She wanted to wait for Chen Hao's explanation. What kind of awesome person is this? He's not a disciple of the temple. But he made 2 beautiful female disciples of the temple fight over him. Yes, he's too awesome. Just by looking at the aura of these 2 female disciples, they are definitely not ordinary disciples of the temple. And they are both beautiful and of the highest quality. Phew. Comparing people with people is really fucking incomparable. When Chen Hao brought the 2 girls into the restaurant and returned to their rooms, the cultivators who had witnessed the entire process in the restaurant's hall began to discuss. They were absolutely undisguised envy, jealousy, and hatred, and they all guessed Chen Hao's identity. The manager of the restaurant, a heavenly immortal expert, also heaved a sigh of relief. Humph. As soon as they entered the room, Long Ting shook off Chen Hao's red hand, put her hands on her hips, and stared at Chen Hao saying, "Who is she?" "Don't be anxious, don't be anxious," Chen Hao said with a smile. He turned to look at Chen Shui, who had already calmed down and was waiting for a good show, and said, "Little Shui, what's the matter with you?" "What's the matter with what?" "Little Shui? So intimate." Chen Shui? While Long Ting was furious, she suddenly saw Chen Shui return to her original appearance, and this instantly allowed her to know who this so-called Little Shui was. Although Long Ting hadn't seen Chen Hao's Dao companions in person, she had seen images of them long ago. How could she not recognize them? And it was precisely because she recognized them that she, who was similarly aware of the situation, instantly opened her eyes wide, and the unconcealment in her heart was directly thrown beyond the 9 heavens. It turned into shock, and she practically screamed out Chen Shui's name. Haha. Hello Long Ting. Although Chen Shui hadn't seen Long Ting, she knew a lot of information from Tantai Lian, and with Chen Hao's conduct, it was within her expectations long ago. But the intense hostility Long Ting directly displayed towards her earlier caused her to be puzzled, and at the same time, she had the thought of competing with Long Ting. But now, it was obviously unable to continue. Haha. Alright, just now at the beginning, I took you to be Bailey Ning Bing. So that's how it is. I was wondering why you were so ruthless. Little Shui, tell me what's going on first. How did you become a Divine Hall disciple? Why are you here again? Chen Hao couldn't help but ask. Didn't you make an appointment with me? Long Ting was surprised. Just now, Chen Shui had directly come to look for Chen Hao. Even now, Long Ting knew that it was Chen Shui, but she was still a little unhappy that Chen Hao had kept it from her. Since when did I make an appointment? I was still wondering why the 2 of you were at odds. Chen Hao said. The situation is a little complicated. Chen Shui said. It's like this. Chen Shui told him the situation that she was in a daze. As it turned out, not only had she become a Divine Hall disciple, but even Helian Wuxia, Tantai Lian, Xia Yuyu, Leng Ning Huan, and Leng Ning Lu had all become Divine Hall disciples. Moreover, they had all advanced to the peak of the later stage of the Earth celestial stage. Until now, they still couldn't believe the speed of their cultivation, and they didn't even know what kind of place they had been brought to for cultivation. They only knew that after they had advanced to the peak of the earthly celestial stage, they had been informed by the experts of the Alliance that they had become Divine Hall disciples, and had obtained the right to enter the primitive mystic realm. However, apart from the sisters Leng Ning Lu and Leng Ning Huan, who were arranged to be in the same city, Chen Shui, Tantai Lian, Xia Yuyu, and Helian Wuxia were all separated. Only Chen Shui was assigned to East Flow City, and she was the deputy leader. When Chen Shui came to East Flow City and walked out of the transportation device, she mysteriously received news that Chen Hao was in East Flow City and was staying in East Flow Restaurant. Chen Shui didn't even know who told her this, and the whole process was like a cloud in the clouds. Deputy leader of East Flow City's 9th Regiment? This. Little Shui, the name isn't yours. I checked the name, and the deputy leader is Chen Xiaobai. Cough cough, how can you use a fake identity? Long Ting said with wide eyes. At this moment, although she couldn't find out any specific information as the leader, she could find out the names and realms of all the cultivators in the regiment. The leader of the 9th Regiment was her. Deputy leader Chen Xiaobai. She was curious about who Temple was for a while. I don't know either. Don't worry about it. We only need to know that this was done by Temple, and it's to help us, Chen Hao said. Brother Hao, how can you have so much face? This is simply. Long Ting stared at Chen Hao and said. This? I don't know either. Maybe they saw that I, your brother, have an infinitely awesome future and potential. Yes, it should be like this. Chen Hao said rather proudly on the surface. But in the depths of this guy's heart, there was another feeling. Although he didn't want to admit it, under such a clear situation, Chen Hao had to admit that no matter where it was, things like relying on one's father still seemed to exist. He didn't know whether Chen Shui had thought of this, but now, he was absolutely sure of his original guess. Otherwise, how could there be such a good thing? Or, why didn't Helian Wuxia and the rest come to East Flow City, but Chen Shui? Because this was obviously a special treatment compared to his own son and his own daughter. At the same time, Chen Hao also guessed that his father's obvious exposure was definitely because of the rarely seen primal secret realm. He definitely didn't want Chen Shui and the rest to miss this opportunity, so he had no choice but to do this. Then what was the meaning of sending Chen Shui here? Was he afraid that his daughter's position would be replaced by Long Ting, who he had been in contact with for a long time? Or was he silently allowing the two of them to do that, and start to really communicate now? Cough cough. Chen Hao looked at the blue dress that possessed a fatal temptation to him. Unintentionally, accidentally. He couldn't help but activate the special ability of his eyes, causing him to be distracted. Only when Chen Shui waved her hand in front of his eyes a few times without concealing anything, did this fellow cough awkwardly twice. What's there to see? Chen Shui said with a slightly red face. I haven't seen you dressed like this for many years. It's so beautiful. Ah, you haven't seen each other for so long. Do whatever you want. Treat me as if I don't exist. Oh, forget it. You guys go to the cultivation room, I'll sleep for a while. Long Ting, what are you talking about? Are we going to stay in the same room as him? Are we going to get a room? How wasteful. Long Ting's beautiful little face had a devilish smile, and she actually said the word wasteful. But in Chen Hao's ears, even though he knew that this girl was lying with her eyes wide open, it was still rather comfortable and extremely pleasant to listen to. After Long Ting finished speaking, she directly walked into the bedroom and closed the door. That's true. Anyway, we're leaving tomorrow. Chen Shui said. She really knew how to be thrifty, but before she finished speaking, Chen Hao hugged her by the waist, and she screamed as they walked towards the cultivation room. That look was completely like an impatient groom, carrying the bride that he had coveted for many years into the bridal chamber. No matter whether it was Chen Hao or Chen Shui, at this moment, they were all extremely agitated, incomparably excited, and filled with warm feelings, as well as more than 10 years of yearning. Yes, more than 10 years. Ever since Chen Hao fell into a coma on the Wuxia planet, he and Chen Shui had never met in person. This was the first time. Chapter 658. If not for Long Ting's presence, Chen Hao would have already rubbed Chen Shui into his body. Similarly, if not for Long Ting's presence, Chen Shui would have already pounced into Chen Hao's embrace. More than 10 years of time was indeed just a snap of the fingers for cultivators. However, for a man and a woman who were passionately in love, especially one who had experienced so many times that what was done could not be undone, it was definitely a very long time. Moreover, this kind of feeling would not weaken with time and distance. It would only become more and more stale, more and more fragrant, and more intense. So silence spoke louder than words. It was not that Chen Hao was too thirsty, nor was it that Chen Shui was not reserved, but it had been brewing for too long. Whatever gentle and poetic gentleness, all of that could go to hell. Only tightly entangled hugs, intense kisses, and vigorous caresses could vent a little bit of their longing for each other, and the excitement of their reunion. Chen Hao was like a starving wolf that hungrily, greedily, and madly kissed that sweet and intoxicating cherry mouth. His hands had even completely abandoned the basic rhythm and gentleness as he needed Chen Shui's graceful, exquisite, and soft body that seemed to have no bones. Chen Shui, who was trembling violently, used even more strength to squeeze herself onto Chen Hao's body. Chi, without even a rustling sound. The thin but seemingly distant Taoist robe was turned into ashes by Chen Hao's energy. At the same time, Chen Hao's blue dress, which had a fatal attraction to Chen Hao, was also turned into fine powder by Chen Hao. This fully showed that what really tempted Chen Hao was not the blue dress, but the graceful and delicate body that was protruding under the blue dress. Rip! Ah! When the chest wrap under the blue dress was pulled open by Chen Hao at the same time, Chen Shui suddenly pounced and tightly stuck onto Chen Hao's chest. This made Chen Hao, who originally wanted to feast his eyes, not have the time to directly enter the next stage of feeling. Her burning hot and smooth body, under the pressure of her full and round body, caused the two of them to roll around naked in the huge cultivation room. Apart from the last hurdle, both of them had forgotten about it. Therefore, it seemed that only this kind of tumbling could better release their emotions and desires. Huff huff. No. No way, right? I didn't want to eavesdrop or peek. Why are you so loud? Ugh. Long Ting's delicate body couldn't help but tremble. She had a fiery, straightforward, and generous personality. Even though it was her first time meeting Chen Hao face to face in 3 years, and she also wanted to be intimate with Chen Hao, she knew that she and Chen Hao were on fire, and playing with fire was like playing with fire. She also knew that Chen Hao and Chen Shui needed to comfort each other's feelings more than she did. Therefore, she decisively made space for the two of them. Even though she was very curious about what the two of them were doing and talking about, she simply didn't have the intention to peek. But what she didn't expect was, from time to time, Chen Shui's completely uncontrollable panting and moaning sounds, as well as Chen Hao's deep and heavy breathing, actually entered her ears clearly. It was really a bit too stimulating, especially this kind of sound that caused one to uncontrollably imagine a scene. It was simply a naked temptation. Not to mention Long Ting, who was originally on fire. Even if it were Hellion Wuxia and the other girls, they probably wouldn't be able to bear it. Of course, if it were the other girls, different people's reactions would definitely be different. Tantai Lian, who was already experienced, would definitely be more intense, but definitely not as intense as Long Ting. The reason was very simple. Long Ting had already swallowed the 3rd pill, which was the 3 Yang Nirvana pill. At this moment, receiving this kind of temptation, and one of the main characters was Chen Hao, how could she bear it? Directly, she who was still rational just now didn't think about anything else, and her mind even exploded with a bang. Her ears were filled with the voices of the two of them, and her mind was completely filled with the two of them. Precisely speaking, it was the scene of Chen Hao. The intensity of that reaction. It was even more intense than Chen Shui, who was enduring Chen Hao's wild kisses and barbaric kneading. This was something that Chen Hao and Chen Shui didn't expect, because the two of them were too excited, too urgent, too thirsty. After entering the cultivation room, Chen Hao forgot the most important thing, and that was to activate the restriction. Not activating the restriction was fine for ordinary people, but for Earth Celestial Stage cultivators, it was no different from not having soundproofing facilities. Chen Shui simply didn't think of this point. After all, this was Chen Hao's room, and she didn't think that Chen Hao didn't activate the restriction. If she knew, she would surely die from embarrassment. How? Let's talk about something. Yes, just like this, don't be afraid as long as you don't move. Yes, when the two of them were about to lose control, they finally didn't dare to continue. Otherwise, neither of them would be able to bear it. At this time, obviously, it wasn't the time for the yin and yang to merge. After enduring for so many years, there was no reason to persist until the end. After all, whether it was Chen Hao or Chen Shui, they hadn't reached their limits yet. Chen Hao himself didn't care. After all, he had Tantai Lian first, but he had to care about Chen Shui. But the two of them finally quieted down a little, and with a bang, the door opened. Chen Shui screamed and hid behind Chen Hao. She was so scared that her soul almost left her body. Originally, she had only controlled a little, but the burning desire that was still burning fiercely was completely extinguished. She opened her eyes wide and looked at Long Ting, who suddenly broke in. How could she do this? What kind of person is she? She said she would leave us some space. How could she break in at this time? How did she break in? Slap. Oh no. I forgot to activate the restriction. Sister Tingqi. How could Long Ting still hear Chen Hao's words? The moment she broke in, Long Ting, whose face was shining with an obviously abnormal red, directly pounced on Chen Hao, who was only wearing a pair of shorts. That crazy and completely irrational look was as if she wanted to eat Chen Hao. Fortunately, at this moment, Chen Hao was also frightened away by Long Ting's sudden intrusion. Chen Shui opened her eyes wide. At this moment, she also knew that there was a problem. But what exactly happened to make Long Ting become like this was not something she could know. She could only stare blankly as Long Ting, whose body was extremely strong, hugged Chen Hao and pressed him under her body. She forcefully hugged him, forcefully kissed him, and even with a sizzling sound, her clothes were torn to shreds. Not a single thread was left, and she became completely naked. Chen Shui was dumbfounded. She didn't even put on clothes with her. She stared blankly at the fierce Long Ting and Chen Hao, who looked conflicted but seemed to be enjoying it. What exactly was going on? Chi. Right at this moment, Chen Hao finally emitted numerous profound talisman symbols and directly poured them into Long Ting's body. At the same time, he flipped over and rode Long Ting below him. He said, "Sister Ting, do you want to endure it or eat medicine?" Chen Hao's voice wasn't a simple voice, but a voice that directly touched the soul and contained the profound mysteries of the heart. Long Ting's burning and crazy eyes recovered a trace of clarity, and she trembled as she spat out 2 words. "Eat medicine," hiss. At the same time, a strand of light flew out from between her brows. Chen Hao directly stretched out his hand to catch it, and quickly opened the jade bottle, and stuffed the fiery red and sparkling medicinal pill into Long Ting's mouth. "Little Shui, let's quickly dodge. Sister Ting, you hold on." Ha. Chen Hao pulled Chen Shui and finally couldn't help but laugh loudly. At the same time, he quickly rushed out of the cultivation room and directly activated the restriction from the outside. Long Ting, who temporarily possessed a trace of rationality, was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. It was too embarrassing. But shortly after, the medicinal strength of the 4th medicinal pill that she just swallowed suffused her and burned fiercely. But at this time, she was still able to maintain a trace of clarity. Every time a rebirth pill was swallowed, the moment it was swallowed, it would erupt, but at this time, one would still be able to maintain a trace of rationality. And as time passed, every time it flared up in the future, the rationality one retained would become weaker and weaker, until they completely lost their rationality. In reality, if Long Ting wasn't stimulated by Chen Hao and Chen Shui earlier, she wouldn't have lost her rationality so quickly, and could still endure 1 or 2 times before swallowing the 4th medicinal pill. But at this time, she who'd been slightly awakened by Chen Hao, how could she still endure it? She'd already lost all her dignity. It was the first time Chen Shui had met her, and she'd forced her way in. It was fine if she'd seen her, but she'd completely seen her. She'd even caused herself to be at a disadvantage, completely naked in front of her. The most embarrassing thing in her life was nothing more than this. Ha. Chen Hao laughed loudly, hugging Chen Shui, who was only wearing her underwear. He who was shocked, and wasn't prepared for it, was directly suppressed. Although he was aroused a little by Long Ting, it was far from the time to flare up. Besides, in front of Chen Shui, although he wanted to flare up, it wasn't the time yet. How could he flare up? At this moment, the only feeling he had was, it was too fun. Especially when he thought of the awkward scene of the 2 girls meeting later, he was even more amused. "It's good that you forgot. You should have forgotten to activate the restriction. Quickly let go of me." Chen Shui struggled out of Chen Hao's embrace, and with a hiss, she quickly put on her clothes and glared at Chen Hao. What's wrong with her? She's too much. Luckily we're not. It's a long story. Listen to your brother slowly, hee. No, it can't be. That's the truth. Tell me, do I have a choice? Long Ting treated me like this. It's definitely not because I'm romantic. There's no need to explain. Every time, you'll always find a sufficient reason for yourself. It's just that for you Long Ting really sacrificed a lot. Yes. Although Sister Ting isn't anxious about little Shui, she's really good. Glib tongue, who'd believe you? Hee. It's up to you to believe it or not. In any case, I haven't said such glib words to any of them. Chen Hao's gaze stared straight at Chen Shui, and the corners of his mouth carried an evil smile as he spoke. Chapter 659. Does that mean that I'm going to be a big shot in the future? Ahem. Little Shui, We are a harmonious society, and the slogan is that everyone is equal. We don't need those superficial things. Chen Hao said as he pulled Chen Shui into his arms and snuggled up to her. Chen Shui raised her pretty face and rolled her eyes at Chen Hao, but she was still secretly happy and would not really be entangled in this issue. In fact, she was just casually saying it. Even if Chen Hao agreed to it, she would not accept it. Wouldn't that make her a target of public criticism? Moreover, it was just as Chen Hao had said. It was indeed just a formality and was completely meaningless. Long Ting will be fine, right? She's fine, just a little difficult to bear. She'll be fine in about 4 hours. Then can I, Xiao Wu, and the others use this kind of pill? Why are you asking this? Chen Hao was slightly stunned. The refining effect is so good, of course we want to use it. The few of us improve too quickly in that space, and we always have a feeling of unease. What you said, that kind of burning body, burning spirit, has an amazing effect on the physical body, the soul, and the state of mind, so, I don't know the specific situation, but even if you can use it, I'm afraid I can't use it again. It's not like it works together, we use ours, you don't have to use it. This is unfair to you? When have you ever been fair to us? Ahem. Then when Long Ting comes out, you can ask her. Although I studied this medicine, I didn't study it in depth. You have to ask her for the specific details. Moreover, I don't think it's possible. The mystery of this medicine, if you use it alone, will become extremely evil. As long as I don't swallow the pill that contains your essence and blood, in the future when yin and yang are mixed, I'm afraid you will also lose yourself. Chen Hao said as he smelled the faint body fragrance on Chen Shui's body. If Chen Shui's idea could work, it was indeed a good way for them to cultivate, but if it turned into the situation that Guan wanted to do to Long Ting, it would not work. Even if his woman was deeply in love with him, he could not allow it to happen because of the effects of the drug. That would be a complete loss of self. Oh, then I'll go report first. I haven't reported yet. Wait. What happened? The report ends in the evening. It's still early. Dear Xiao Shui, are you? Chen Hao was originally hugging Chen Shui from behind and snuggling up to her. At this moment, he moved closer to Chen Shui's ear and seemed to be a little embarrassed as he stuttered. At the same time, one of his hands grabbed Chen Shui's small hand. What? Chen Shui asked curiously. Since when was this guy embarrassed? The two of them were only one step away. What was there to be embarrassed about? In the end, Chen Hao felt that it was a little too shameless, so he couldn't directly say it out loud. He changed his strategy and said, Have you seen the information about the dual cultivation absolute art? I've seen a little bit. Back then, when you fell into a coma, we didn't dare to tell my mother and senior immortal Yunwei the truth. We could only think of a way ourselves. So back then we all saw a little bit. Unfortunately, it was useless. Why are you asking this? When Chen Shui thought of the situation back then, a sweet feeling gushed out from her heart. Especially when she thought of Tantai Lian, who was peeked at by everyone. She couldn't help but reveal a smile. What are you doing? I'm sick. I have to treat it. Xiao Shui, I have a prelude to the dual cultivation method here. I'll pass it to you. This illness can only be treated by you, the initiator. Take pity on me. Otherwise my balls will be broken. Chen Hao, this shameless guy, forcefully pressed Chen Shui's small hand to a certain part of his body, causing Chen Shui to be shocked and embarrassed. The fire, that had just been calmed down, immediately rose up. Her heart was thumping. However, the relationship between the two of them had already reached the last step. Although this action was extremely, Chen Shui didn't forcefully resist. Moreover, from being forced to hold it to the feeling of curiosity and shyness, hot and hard, that feeling made Chen Shui, who understood but had never experienced it before, go soft all over, hiss. It was also at this moment that a white light condensed from his will abruptly flashed out from between Chen Hao's brows and entered between Chen Shui's brows. This wretched guy actually didn't hesitate to teach Chen Shui how to do it in order to not make his balls hurt too much. This was truly too shameless. However, it was something that couldn't be helped. Chen Hao, who thought himself to be righteous and clean, would find it difficult to directly tell Chen Shui how to do it no matter what. Only this hypocritical method of using the name of an absolute art. Ah. I won't do it. I won't do it. You rogue. Xiao Shui, you have to think clearly. Men are different from women. I'm really sick. This illness can be serious or serious. And the consequences can be light or heavy. For the sake of you being able to reach a higher realm in the future, I have to keep myself clean and endure it. However, enduring it is truly too difficult. It's fine if it's just suffering, but look at how swollen it is. If this goes on, then the consequences will be serious. Not to mention internal injuries. I'm afraid I won't be able to endure it when seeing a beautiful woman. Could it be that Xiao Shui wants to see more and more sisters of yours? You dare. I beg of you. Looking at Chen Hao's appearance, she didn't know if he was faking it or not, but in short, he was in a lot of pain. Chen Shui's tone finally softened. It's so embarrassing. You close your eyes, you're not allowed to look. Can you really do it? Yes, quickly. Don't even think about the other methods. I will use the first method. All right. Although Chen Hao had extravagant hopes, he knew that this was a path that he firmly believed in. It was enough that Chen Shui agreed to use the first method. At least this was a good start. You're not allowed to look. Great aunt, you should start already. It's already been 5 minutes. Chen Shui's heart was beating rapidly. Seeing Chen Hao's painful appearance, she finally gathered her courage and burrowed into Chen Hao's embrace. Using her back to face Chen Hao, she also closed her eyes. Her little trembling hand reached in. Little Shui, I love you. Chen Shui, who was rushing towards the alliance's center quickly, her mind was filled with Chen Hao's appearance when he finally bloomed. Especially when she thought of the words that Chen Hao whispered in her ear after he stopped trembling. It actually made Chen Shui feel extremely satisfied. Moreover, Chen Shui realized that when she saw Chen Hao's comfortable appearance, she felt very happy. What she was doing was something that was difficult to talk about and embarrassing to death, but she felt that it was all worth it. Was being able to make him comfortable her happiness? Only then did he say that he loved me. Did he love me, or did he love me helping him? Chen Shui muttered in her mind all the way. Even though she had changed her true appearance, she, who was wearing a blue dress, was still beautiful and moving under the influence of this sweet mood. Vice leader position, Chen Xiaobai, disciple of the temple. His background is actually from the temple. Phew. After Chen Shui reported and received the token, she immediately left. And the old man in charge of her report looked at Chen Shui's back view with envy and jealousy. It was not because of Chen Shui's cultivation level or strength, but because of the information displayed by her identity token, which surprised the old man. The so-called background of the temple meant that the young lady called Chen Xiaobai was a direct descendant of the upper echelon of the temple, and a pure upper echelon of the temple. In the temple, how many people could be pure upper echelon of the temple? The so-called pure upper echelon of the temple meant that they had not established any forces or families. They had dedicated their entire lives to the temple, to the human race. Such a person would have an extremely high status in the temple. They did not have many children or direct descendants, but every single one of them would enjoy special treatment from the temple. This was something that the direct descendants of the upper echelon of the temple who had their own forces and families could not enjoy. Such upper echelon of the temple could be counted with 2 hands. Naturally, there were some in the dark, otherwise the young lady would not have the surname Chen that the old man did not know. But no matter what, to be able to show that they were from the temple, they were all existences that made people envious and jealous, and their backgrounds were definitely extremely powerful. I have to inform the city lord, the focus of tonight's banquet will most likely have to be adjusted. The old man in charge of Chen Shui's report pondered for a while, then made a decision. The temple would definitely not announce such a matter in a high-profile manner, but since they had discovered it, they could not ignore it. If they really treated it as a low profile, then they would really be idiots. After all, this time's report in the primal secret domain was also the time to verify the true information. Even if the temple wanted to hide their identity, at this time it was impossible. That also meant that the upper echelon of the temple definitely knew that Chen Xiaobai's identity would be discovered by East Flow City. If they did not do anything, Wouldn't that be disrespectful to Chen Xiaobai's elders? Chen Shui came and went like lightning, without any delay. She only used 10 minutes to go back and forth. But what surprised her was, "Miss Chen, hello." Just as she returned to the East Flow restaurant, 3 old men who had restrained their auras, but emitted an invisible pressure that could make the heavens and the earth prostrate themselves, were actually standing at the entrance of the restaurant. When they saw her arrive, they immediately went up to her with a face full of smiles. More importantly, their gazes towards Chen Shui caused her to be very puzzled, uneasy, and ashamed. With a single glance, she could see that these old men had an absolutely revered status, and their cultivations were definitely stronger than any heavenly immortal. Yet, they were actually cupping their fists towards her, and their eyes were filled with love and respect, and if they were greeting her, they were still respectfully addressing her as sir. What was this situation? Say, Senior, you this is? Chen Shui nervously bowed and asked. Miss Chen, the Alliance has just received news that Miss Chen has come to our East Flow city. Please forgive us for our lack of manners. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 660. This. Senior, did you make a mistake? I am only an ordinary disciple of the temple. There is no need to be so polite. Chen Shui didn't think that she was some great figure. Not to mention that these 3 people were obviously amazing people from the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. But from how the surrounding cultivators were respectfully looking at them, Chen Shui could guess that these 3 were the highest level figures of East Flow City. How could they be so polite to a mere disciple of the temple who was suspected of being a fake? No, the word polite could no longer be used to describe them. Although Chen Shui didn't know what was going on, she didn't think that she could calmly accept this. There had to be some mistake somewhere. I understand. Miss Chen, the best room in Flowing Cloud Restaurant has already been arranged for you. Your 2 friends have also been arranged to be next to you. As for the banquet tonight, the 3 people's expressions didn't change. The old man in the middle directly asked with a sound transmission. Top room banquet seat? Chen Shui asked with a sound transmission, puzzled. It's like this. Our East Flow City's division master heading to the primal mystic realm is also the highest commander appointed by your temple disciples, Chen Lin. Tonight, he will be gathering everyone above the rank of captain and vice-captain for a banquet, so that they can familiarize themselves with each other. Our East Flow City will be responsible for organizing this banquet. When the time comes, your seat. Should we arrange it according to your rank as vice-captain? Oh, you can arrange it however you want. I am only an ordinary vice-captain. I understand. Then Miss Chen, the top room should be fine, right? Thank you for your hospitality. My friends and I already have rooms. If there is nothing else, Junior will be going first. Yes. Please. Chen Shui was confused. She quickly left, not understanding why these people would treat an ordinary temple disciple like her with such respect. Could it be that they had mistaken her for someone else? Perhaps this was the only possibility. In any case, she hadn't accepted anything from them. Even if they discovered that they had made a mistake in the future, it wouldn't have anything to do with her. This Chen Xiaobai is quite good. She is so respectful to us and her words and actions show that she thinks highly of us. It is rare for a disciple with such a status to be so humble and courteous. Haha, that's true. We've seen many disciples with such a status. Each one of them thinks they are some sort of character, but they have no idea that others give them face because of their father. Especially that boy who came to our East Flow City last time. For better or worse, we are peak characters of vast universe galaxy. Do you really think we're afraid of him? That's right. If it weren't for our East Flow City, who would listen to him? I'm still the supreme of Hongmeng. What Chen Shui didn't know was that her fearful rejection of the other party's hospitality had instead made the 3 elders praise her greatly. In fact, these 3 old men were all high-level figures of East Flow City. If they were placed on the 36 main planets like the Ying planet, even if they couldn't obtain the position of controller, they would still be existences second only to the controller. Such a character, even in the vast universe galaxy, was a mighty supreme elder. Only the direct descendants of the peak high-level figures of the Holy Temple who were revered and worshipped by the entire human race would receive such a grand reception. This was completely out of respect for their elders. If it were just them, they wouldn't even be worth a fart. Every time such a person came to East Flow City, it was always a depressing matter. If they didn't receive them with a grand reception, and if the great figure behind them felt disrespectful, that wouldn't be good at all. It might even affect East Flow City. Although they received them with a grand reception, many times these juniors really did treat them like servants. They had to endure it and not lower themselves to the same level as these juniors. For instance, when the East Flow City's city lord received the news from the old man at the reporting office, he had directly sent 3 people over. Before coming, the 3 of them had already prepared themselves, but they hadn't expected. This descendant of the Holy Temple's peak high-level figures, Chen Xiaobai, was completely different from the majority of disciples who were born with a golden spoon in their mouths. This caused the 3 of them to breathe a sigh of relief, and also praise him greatly. "What's wrong?" Chen Hao, who was in high spirits, opened the door and saw Chen Shui frowning. He was a little embarrassed as he asked. Without waiting for Chen Shui to speak, he said, "Little Shui, if you're not happy, I won't let you do that in the future." "No, how am I not happy? I just ran into something strange." "Strange? What strange thing?" Chen Hao heaved a sigh of relief, and asked when he heard Chen Shui say this. After Chen Shui finished explaining the situation of the 3 Grand Mist Supremacy Realm Masters to Chen Hao, she said, "I think they must have mistaken me for someone else, don't you think so? What's with that expression of yours? I'm talking business with you." "Haha, such a good thing. You can arrange the banquet as you wish. Why don't you want a top-tier room? With my status, even if I had money, I still wouldn't be able to enjoy a top-tier room. They mistook me for someone else. How could I have the nerve to ask for one?" "Wrong. They definitely didn't mistake you for someone else. Rather, when you reported in, they saw your identity and that's why this situation occurred. Otherwise, they would have appeared when you entered East Flow City. My identity information must be fake. It's precisely because it's fake, and because the fake identity is awesome, it's even more awesome. Think about it, the primal mystic realm restricts everyone from using their true identity to enter. So who can use a fake identity? Even the direct descendants of the top clans of East Flow City can't. Arranging for you, Little Wu, Little Lian, and the others to become disciples of the temple, and then appearing with fake identities is already very awesome. Moreover, if my guess isn't wrong, the fake identity given to you is also very awesome. If that's the case, then your fake identity isn't a fake identity, but an identity given to you by the person who arranged it. Ha ha ha. That can't be right. That's the truth, haha. This kind of feeling isn't bad. What kind of feeling isn't bad? Relying on your father. Cough cough, I mean the benefits of your identity are quite good. Relying on my father. What does that mean? Don't hide it from me. Chen Shui glared at Chen Hao. She had the most contact with Chen Hao, so how could she not understand Chen Hao? Since he had said something she didn't understand, there was naturally something fishy going on. Moreover, ever since she had been placed under house arrest, Chen Shui felt that everything had gone too smoothly. It was too unbelievable, especially the training space provided to them during this time. And now they were directly disciples of the temple. Moreover, they had even revealed an awesome fake identity. All of this was like a dream. No matter how great Chen Hao's talent was, that was only Chen Hao's matter. How could he possibly take care of all of them? Chen Shui wasn't stupid. Although she didn't know what level of treatment she received, she was sure that even the disciples of the top influences of vast universe star didn't receive such treatment. I'm only guessing. It should be, our father. That thing isn't simple at all. Chen Hao scratched his head. It wasn't that he wanted to hide this from Chen Shui, but that he knew how much Chen Shui resented her father. That was her father, but in her entire life, she had never even seen him once, much less enjoyed the joy and love of a father. And this non-biological son of his was now both a son and a son-in-law. From a fair point of view, even Chen Hao couldn't understand his father's approach. It wasn't that his father was wrong. After all, Chen Shui's mother, Venerable Han Mei, had used a scheme, otherwise her twin sister, his own mother, wouldn't have fallen out with her. But Chen Hao still couldn't figure out many things. From what he knew now, his father should be awesome to an indescribable degree. Why would he conceal his identity and come to the small limitless star, become a small cultivator, and then become immortal? It was fine if he was immortal, but he actually had his legs broken by a weakling. Did he really have no ability at that time? Or did he really seal himself to become an ordinary person? But later on, as he improved, why did he become more and more unfathomable, as if he also had abilities? There were many aspects that Chen Hao couldn't figure out at all. Sure enough, after hearing Chen Hao's words, Chen Shui didn't say anything directly, and her expression became ugly. Xiao Shui, don't think so much. One day, everything will be solved. As juniors, there are many things that we don't understand at all. You can't look at this problem from your point of view. Now there's still me, right? I don't say that my father is definitely right, but I can't say that he's not wrong. Similarly, our mother, master, she definitely has something wrong. So, we can only look at it fairly. There will definitely be a result in the future. I've told you before, when I went to the secular world to visit father and mother, that is when master extracted her memory and asked me to pass it to father. He knew of your existence and was very happy. Although you haven't seen him, I believe that from that time onwards, you've always been under his gaze. So what? Cough cough. Nothing. In short, even if it's for our future, you have to be more open-minded, right? Moreover, now is not the final result. When the truth is revealed, we can judge who's right and who's wrong, okay? I'm definitely not biased towards father. Chen Shui stared at Chen Hao for a few seconds before finally nodding her head lightly. An hour later, creak, the door of the cultivation room slowly opened. Long Ting walked out in a natural and unrestrained manner, dressed neatly. When she saw Chen Hao and Chen Shui who were sitting in the hall staring at her, she chuckled. Her pair of beautiful eyes met Chen Shui's as she nodded her head, directly locking onto Chen Hao. With a hiss, she went to Chen Hao's side. Speak. You're deliberately making a fool of me, aren't you? Cough cough. Sister Ting, this really wasn't intentional. Nonsense. You clearly knew that he had the effects of the medicine in his body, and that it had acted up a few times already, but you didn't activate the restriction of the cultivation room. You caused me. Speaking up to this point, Long Ting looked at Chen Shui again and said, Chen Shui, Xiao Shui, if he didn't activate the restriction, I heard everything. He also caused you to make a fool of yourself. Ah, it's so embarrassing. Luckily I heard it. Don't you think he should be taught a lesson? If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 661. No matter if it was Chen Hao or Chen Shui, they were all stunned by Long Ting's unexpected attack. This was definitely an all-around, indiscriminate AoE attack. She obviously wanted to pull Chen Shui into a team to kill Chen Hao, this boss monster, but the AoE attack she released affected Chen Shui as well. Especially that clear and vivid ah. It directly made Chen Shui's beautiful face turn into a ripe red apple. If it was just this, it would be fine, but the words she said also successfully provoked Chen Shui. Chen Hao looked at Chen Shui whose face was completely red, also turning her head to glare at him. And then looked at Long Ting whose eyes were filled with a little devil's smile. He was really depressed. This girl took the initiative to strip naked and wanted to rape him. Moreover, it was in front of Chen Shui. Originally, she should be very embarrassed and lose face, and then be so embarrassed that she didn't dare to see him and Chen Shui. But she actually checkmated the two of them instead. Needless to say, Chen Hao knew that this girl was looking for balance. First, let Chen Shui know that although she didn't see you completely stripped naked, but your embarrassing moan was heard by this sister. If you dare to laugh at this sister, then this sister can laugh at you. Second, direct the spearhead directly to Chen Hao and tell Chen Shui that no matter if it was her or Chen Shui, the reason why they made a fool of themselves was because of Chen Hao's intention. You deserve it. Chen Shui held back for a long time, and finally chose to be in the same trench as Long Ting. As a result, Chen Hao didn't even have the chance to explain before the two girls directly pounced on him. They executed the standard pinch and pinch technique of women, and they started to fight with each other. They fought back and forth with great pleasure. Only when Long Ting's and Chen Shui's tokens vibrated at the same time did they stop. Chen Lin informed the banquet hall on the top floor of the restaurant. Long Ting said, It's none of your business. Chen Shui replied and looked at Chen Hao. 2 team leaders, you can go. This soldier will wash up and wait on the bed. Pervert. Rogue. That's strange. Captains, no matter if it's a pervert or a hooligan, they both refer to the indecent behavior of people of the opposite sex who aren't Dao companions. Between Dao companions, it's normal, obligatory, and necessary emotional communication. Chen Hao said in all seriousness. In return, the 2 girls rolled their eyes. However, Chen Shui didn't bicker anymore. She looked at Long Ting and said, Let's go. Chen Lin had used his division head token to send the message. Nominally, he was gathering all the cultivators above the rank of large team leader and vice team leader, so that they could work together after entering the primal secret realm. This was equivalent to a military order. If they did not go, it would not be appropriate. Furthermore, the commander Long Ting had to pass the order to the large team leader and vice team leader's tokens that she was in charge of. Wait. Long Ting responded to Chen Hao. She looked at Chen Hao with a solemn expression and said, Little soldier Chen Hao, listen up. Sir Regiment Commander. What are your orders? Chen Hao asked, puzzled. I order you to accompany the large team leader and vice team leader. You are not to disobey. Cough cough. Sister Ting, stop fooling around. Go quickly and come back quickly. Chen Hao said. When you come back, you can do whatever you want to me. I'll let you do whatever you want to me. Let's go Long Ting. Chen Shui said. That. Brother Hao, I can't. I have a few friends who want to get to know you. I've already told them to bring you along. Long Ting's expression changed instantly. She looked at Chen Hao pitifully and said, Sister Ting, I'm just an ordinary member. This banquet is for the large team leaders and above. They should be discussing important matters. It's not appropriate for me to go. You promised your friends that we'll meet after the banquet. Chen Hao regained his composure and said, although he didn't want to hide himself anymore, there was no need for him to purposely show himself in public. All right. Long Ting hesitated for a while before replying. She already knew that Chen Hao wasn't willing to join in the fun. Now that she heard what Chen Hao said, she didn't force him. There were a total of 222 people who attended the banquet. Among them, 22 were disciples appointed by the Divine Temple, and were the main characters of tonight's banquet. As for division leader Chen Lin, he was undoubtedly the center of attention. During the banquet, as Long Ting expected, Chen Lin kept showing his goodwill. Although he didn't go overboard, he was like a louse on a monk's head. Even Chen Shui could tell. The smart Chen Shui naturally understood the real reason why Long Ting called Chen Hao over. Unfortunately, she didn't say it directly. Otherwise, Chen Shui was sure that with Chen Hao's personality, he wouldn't even need to think about it, and would immediately come over. When the 2 of them saw that it was about time, they took the initiative to greet Mo Weiwei and the other large team leaders. Then they excused themselves and walked out of the banquet hall. Long Ting, aren't you going to greet division leader? Why bother with him? But he's already here. Chen Shui walked side by side with Long Ting and transmitted her voice. He's here. We should take the initiative to greet him. I don't want him to think that I'm doing this to him. Junior Sister Ting, Junior Sister Xiaobai, are you leaving already? Chen Lin, who was busy socializing, quickly caught up with the 2 of them and asked. Yes, senior brother Chen Lin. Go ahead and do what you need to do. My Dao partner has been rushing us a few times. I'm sorry. Long Ting seized the opportunity and said with a smile. Your Dao partner? Oh. Senior brother Chen Lin, you might not know that my Dao partner is also participating in this primitive mystic area. I'm sorry that she's rushing us again. Goodbye. After saying that, Long Ting pulled Chen Shui and left in a flash. Chen Lin was left frowning slightly. Her Dao partner. There's only one in name. He's a disciple from a small planet in the Ying planet, Chen Hao. Chen Hao. Could it be that I met him when I reported today? Yes. It must be him. Phew. Almost instantly, Chen Lin thought of the young man named Chen Hao that he had seen before. However, at that time he did not think that it would be Chen Hao from the Ying planet, who had been famous in the vast universe galaxy because of his results in the preliminary examination. However, Long Ting's words had directly raised the possibility of this to 100%. Information about Chen Hao, his current cultivation level and aura. This time, Chen Lin was truly shocked. When he had first seen Chen Hao, he had been surprised by the other party's powerful aura that did not match his cultivation level. However, he had only been surprised to see that he was not a disciple of the Divine Temple. However, now that he had confirmed Chen Hao's identity, it was a completely different matter. This was because he had read up on Chen Hao and naturally knew how shocking this was. This was something that could not be determined purely by sensing. For example, one's age could only be determined roughly but not specifically. Furthermore, as one's cultivation level increased, this kind of sensing would become more and more vague. At the very least, it would be determined in units of thousands of years. But now, according to what he knew, Chen Hao was not even 100 years old, let alone 1,000 years old. More importantly, more than 3 years ago, Chen Hao had just stepped onto the Ying planet and taken the preliminary examination. However, now he was already an expert in the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage. This kind of advancement speed was already considered shocking, but for the genius disciples of the Divine Temple, especially geniuses like Chen Lin, it was nothing. Most importantly, the aura that Chen Hao possessed when he was in the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage. When all these factors were put together, Chen Lin was truly shocked. Such shocking talent, even if compared to him, was superior. There was no one who could match up to him. Phew, I thought I could handle Long Ting, but now it seems that there's basically no hope. However, if there's a chance, there's no harm in trying. Chen Lin thought to himself. He shook his head a little gloomily, and once again entered the crowd to enjoy the pleasure of being a supreme leader. However, just as the banquet was ending, a message from the army commander's token. Looks like it's confirmed who the army commander in charge of East Flow City is. Moling Takshu, it's actually Brother Moling? I'm in luck. Everyone, I'd like to announce that the army commander of the East Flow City has been confirmed. He's my best friend, one of the top 10 experts in the Earth celestial stage of the Divine Temple. This is a good thing for us. As long as everyone is united and obeys orders, we won't be mistreated in terms of distribution. Of course, if the army is involved, it'll definitely be the top treasures in the primitive mystic realm. If Long Ting were still here, she would definitely be depressed. Moling Takshu was none other than Bailey Ningbing's fellow disciple, the one who had helped Bailey Ningbing block her disgusting fellow last time. What? Why didn't you say this earlier? When the two women returned to their room, Chen Shui revealed a little bit of information. As expected, Chen Hao jumped up immediately. It's not as exaggerated as you think. I just feel that he's a little interested. It's not a big deal. Also, when I came back, I made it clear that my cultivation partner was urging me. Alas, if it weren't for cultivation, Brother Hao, we wouldn't be in such trouble. That's right. Why don't we just do it tonight? Who cares if he's cultivating or not? What do you think? Sure. Long Ting said as she moved closer to Chen Hao. Chen Shui looked at Long Ting speechlessly. Wasn't this lass looking for trouble? A certain someone was usually not shameless, but when she was shameless, who could beat her? Just like asking her to do that kind of thing. But what made Chen Shui surprised was, this Sister Ting, I'm just joking. Forget it. You've just taken medicine, I can't take it. You'll stay in the cultivation room. In the bedroom, little Shui and I will have a good night's sleep. We'll go light tomorrow morning. Don't have any objections. You're too tempting now. I don't want to flare up. Go. I have objections. I'll go to the cultivation room with Long Ting. You can stay in the bedroom. Chen Shui saw Chen Hao's gaze inadvertently looking at her, and her heart skipped a beat. She was so frightened that she hurriedly said, I'm the head of the family. If you have any objections, keep them to yourself. Chen Hao released his energy directly and pulled Chen Shui back. Okay, it's boring to play with fire. Although little Shui is at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage, and her aura is very strong, she's a little weak. Why don't you play for real? Remember to activate the restrictive spell. Don't let me hear you again, ha ha ha. Chapter 662. Chi. 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 The next morning, at the Spaceplane Plaza in the center of East Flow City, there were 1,000 spaceplanes lined up neatly. Millions of cultivators at the Earth's celestial stage turned into streaks of light and flew toward the spaceplanes they were going to take. Be careful. Let's go. After stepping into the plaza, it was time for Chen Hao, Chen Shui, and Long Ting to part ways. The cultivators at the rank of captain and vice captain would take the same spaceplane. It was the most powerful spaceplane among the 1,000 spaceplanes. The captains would take the same spaceplane with their 10 squads, a total of 1,000 people. This meant that Chen Hao would have to fly for at least a few months in the chaotic space. After entering the primitive mystic area, it would depend on the situation. If there were no problems, Chen Hao would have to travel alone. Hello, Captain. Wow. Our captain is so young and so handsome. Hello, Captain. He is more than handsome. He is at the peak of the Earth's celestial stage. This aura is too powerful. Cough cough. Fellow cultivators, you are mistaken. I am an ordinary soldier like everyone else. When Chen Hao stepped into the spaceplane, there were already hundreds of people in it. What made Chen Hao embarrassed was that he did not hide his aura and caused a commotion. Most people even mistook him for a captain. That's impossible. Brother, you are so powerful. Oh, I understand. You must have given up your position on your own accord. Yes, I am sorry. Chen Hao said helplessly. He had decided to appear as his real self. At this time, he realized that it was time to restrain himself. There was no need to attract too much attention in this place. Little brother, how should I address you? My name is Mei Chaofeng. Can I go with you? Don't worry, I just need to follow you. I promise I will not be a burden to you. No matter what you need, as long as I can do it, I will do it for you. Little brother, we will be in the chaotic space for almost half a year. Can I go with you? Although I do not have an original Yin body, I am proficient in the dual cultivation method. I believe it will be beneficial to your cultivation. Or you can name a price. As long as I can afford it, I will give it to you. This is just a deal, and it won't affect you at all. Please help me. I've been stuck at the peak of the Earth's celestial stage for too long, and only a genius like you can help me. My cultivation partner died many years ago, and I'm not a fickle woman. Sorry. What made Chen Hao almost break out in a cold sweat was that two sweet voices entered his ears from two different directions. They actually wanted to be friends. Damn, there are all kinds of birds in the forest. Am I such a casual person? However, it had to be said that although Chen Hao did not look at them, he could sense with his spiritual consciousness that the two female cultivators were indeed quite beautiful. She believed that if it was another man who didn't care about trifles, he probably wouldn't refuse. Unfortunately, they were not tempting to Chen Hao at all. Even if they were 10 times more beautiful, he would not agree. What was the difference between him and a prostitute? However, Chen Hao did not underestimate them. Just like the cultivation method of the Happy Valley on the Asianing planet, it was 100 or even 1,000 times more evil. Still, it was able to exist openly and become one of the top sects on the Asianing planet. These female cultivators were also doing it for the sake of increasing their strength and cultivation. They came to him so easily and directly because he was so talented. He was definitely the best choice for dual cultivation. For female cultivators who relied on this method to improve their strength, it was no different from eating Tangsang's meat. In fact, what Chen Hao didn't know was that it wasn't just these ordinary cultivators. Even the top genius cultivators had such a phenomenon. In order to improve their strength, they secretly sought out more talented members of the opposite sex. Even their cultivation partners allowed it. It was not uncommon. Little brother, don't you want to look at me? Maybe you will be tempted? Sorry. You'd better find someone else. I don't do this. Chen Hao forcibly cut off the other party's mind again. At the same time, he activated a powerful mind guard to shield himself, and quickly walked to his seat. This is too crowded. Chen Hao glanced around and thought to himself after he sat down. Under normal circumstances, the space between the seats of the Alliance's aircraft was several hundred feet apart. However, this aircraft, which looked very big from the outside, was only 10 feet apart from the inside. Obviously, the space was occupied by other uses. Brother, how should I address you? My name is Li Tian. I'm a disciple of the Sword Rain sect from East Flow City. I'm the team leader. You should be in our team. Ha! You're not from East Flow City, are you? Chun Hao, from the Asianing planet. Team leader Li, this aircraft looks quite big from the outside. Why is the space between our seats so small? Chun Hao asked the middle-aged cultivator, who was trying to curry favor with him. Haha, it's normal that young people like you don't know. You'll understand when everyone arrives and starts the aircraft. For such a big event, the Alliance doesn't pay anything and is obligated to transport it. However, the cost is very high. Therefore, the Alliance came up with a solution a long time ago. In other words, apart from the captain-level aircraft that has free independent space, we don't have it. If we want to cultivate in peace, we have to spend immortal yuan crystals to enter the VIP room. There are individual rooms inside, just like a restaurant. Of course, the cost of a room of the same level is 100 times higher than in a restaurant. Ordinary people can't afford it. I see. Hello, Brother Chen. I'm Zhao Yuanxiao, a disciple of the Blue Maple sect from East Flow City. Nice to meet you. Brother Chun. Chun Hao felt helpless in the face of the cultivators who came to greet him enthusiastically. However, he didn't have the arrogance of a powerhouse and greeted them with cupped fists. These people only came to greet him and didn't disturb him. Their purpose was simple. They wanted to get familiar with him so that if they met, they would give him some face. This was enough. After a while, Chun Hao also realized that as long as a cultivator had a strong aura, they were very popular. Many people tried to curry favor with them, especially some team leaders and deputy team leaders. Brother Chen, it seems that you're still not used to this situation. We're just trying our luck and don't ask for your help. However, if we meet someone who isn't hostile, it'll be good. If we can help, it'll be better. I know that Brother Chen won't go with our team, but I still hope that if we meet with danger, you can help us if it's convenient. We won't mistreat Brother Chen. No problem. If there's danger in the area, just let me know. If I can help, I'll help. Chun Hao said. Thank you so much. While Chun Hao was busy dealing with them, Long Ting and Chen Shui were much more relaxed in the aircraft above the rank of team leader. They were separated by a few hundred feet, and the banquet last night had allowed them to get to know the cultivators present. These people, whether they were disciples of the Divine Temple or cultivators of the top sects, were all geniuses with their own arrogance. Unless they were like Chun Hao, who was much more powerful than the people around them, no one would put down their pride and deliberately curry favor with them. However, Chen Shui was a little busier than Long Ting. The reason was that Long Ting was familiar with Zhong Yangming and Go Daoqian, the two single disciples of the Divine Temple. Although they had met last night, Chen Shui and Long Ting had left early after a free exchange and an introduction, so they didn't have a chance. But now, the two of them were very interested in Chen Shui, who was hiding her true identity, and took the initiative to find a topic to talk about. Long Ting knew that nothing would happen, so she deliberately ignored it and looked at Chen Shui with a smile. Unfortunately, Long Ting was pleased with herself for a while before she was shocked by Chen Shui's words. She was also surprised that Chen Shui actually. The two of you are not bad. Unfortunately, I'm not interested in you. The one I like is Long Ting. Thank you. Ah, it can't be. You, Zhong Yangming, Go Daoqian, and Mo Weiwei, Duan Rentian, and Long Ting were all dumbfounded. It was not because of Chen Shui's declaration of liking Long Ting, but because of the sudden change in Chen Shui's aura, as if it was completely the aura of her true body, the aura of a man. At the same time, the blue dress on her body suddenly changed into a blue robe. Her beautiful face instantly became more robust, and she became a real handsome guy. She was not inferior to Chen Hao, who was so handsome that he shocked the Central Committee of the Central Committee. The only thing was that she was more handsome than masculine. Ting Ting, forget about Chen Hao. Let's be together in the future, okay? Chen Shui glared at the astonished Long Ting, and with a hiss, She went to Long Ting's side, hugged her by the waist and said, "Ah, you little girl." "How am I a little girl?" "You. Hurry up and go back, don't stay here with me." Long Ting pushed Chen Shui away. Cough cough. "Chen Xiaobai, are you a man or a woman? Isn't this absolute art a little too godly? I can be male or female. But my heart is male, so don't bother me. We can only be friends." Chen Shui looked at Long Ting proudly, but she did not return to her seat. Instead, she sat down beside Long Ting and said, "Let's go together." Swoosh. Long Ting, who was in a daze, suddenly flipped out in broad daylight. A cloud of smoke directly appeared around the two of them. Then, before Chen Shui could react, she grabbed Chen Shui's chest with one hand and reached between her legs with the other. "Ah! Ha ha ha! I told you! Teach me, teach me! I must learn this ultimate skill." "You have to be able to learn it first, but you have to help me with something first." "What is it? Tell me. As long as I can do it, I'll naturally help you. I want." Chapter 663. Fuck. What are the two of them doing? Could it be? Zhong Yangming and the others were a little dumbfounded. At the same time, the cultivators who were paying attention to the situation here were also a little dumbfounded. There was such an absolute art in the world? It could be both male and female. This Chen Xiaobai was not simple. This was the consensus that everyone had reached. At least, no one present could see through any flaws in Chen Xiaobai's disguise as a man. Moreover, although Chen Xiaobai's original appearance was disguised with her aura and appearance, the aura of the primordial Yin body was not something that could be imitated by any man. Unless it was a legendary figure who had surpassed the Hongmeng realm and could directly condense a true life form with supreme magical powers, only then could it be done. However, it was obvious that Chen Xiaobai could not be an expert above the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. In other words, she was indeed a woman. Then the aura that she had turned into a man just now could only mean that she had done it with some kind of absolute art. This absolute art could not increase one's combat strength, but its awesome function was absolutely awesome. On the same day, in the other 4 cities on Vast Universe Star, Helian Wuxi, Tantai Lian, Xia Yuyu, and the Lung sisters, who were inseparable, also boarded the aircraft one after another. The 5 of them were also disciples of the Divine Temple, and did not appear in their true forms. Moreover, the 5 of them were also relatively busy. Even Tantai Lian, who had lost her primordial Yin body, was no exception. As a single woman, especially a genius girl who could become a disciple of the Divine Temple, even if her appearance was ordinary, she would still be popular. It did not matter if she lost her primordial Yin body. There were many cultivators who had the mentality of not having to take responsibility for each other's improvement. However, just like Chun Lin and Long Ting, no one dared to force them. They just tried to get close to them. Under normal circumstances, there would not be any problems. After all, they were all disciples of the Divine Temple, and still had the basic manners. At the same time, any disciple of the Divine Temple would be protected by the human race was very scary. Half an hour later, everyone was present. The captain and vice-captain of the 1,000-man team arrived almost at the same time. Their auras were indeed much higher than the average person's. After entering the cabin, they gave a lecture, and even did a roll call so that everyone could get to know each other. When Chun Hao was mentioned, the two of them couldn't help but take a few more glances at him, but they didn't show any eagerness. The reason was very simple. At this moment, although Chun Hao was still a rare genius who possessed the aura of the peak of the later stage of the Earth's celestial stage at the peak of the initial stage, he wasn't too conspicuous. This was also because Chun Hao could not stand the enthusiasm of the crowd and had deliberately restrained himself. At the very least, even if the cultivators who came later noticed him, they would feel that his combat strength might not be as good as theirs and would not be as enthusiastic as they were at the beginning. The other cultivators who knew Chen Hao's true aura would naturally not gossip and tell everyone that Chen Hao had concealed his aura. People were selfish. If they all went to curry favor with Chen Hao, wouldn't the effect of their enthusiasm weaken? Of course, he wouldn't report it to the captain and vice-captain. How could they say that Chen Hao had an aura that was even stronger than the captain's? If the two of them were very low-key and easy to get along with, they might tell them to increase the strength of the team. However, the two of them were full of officialdom, so those who had such thoughts dismissed the idea. If they said that, what if the two of them were petty and thought that they were being looked down upon? That would be a thankless task, so no one would do it. Everyone, the aircraft is officially activated. The estimated time to reach the primitive mystic realm is about 5 months. During this period, those in the cabin will not be able to enter the second world. If you need to cultivate, you can go to the VIP area. The area will be charged according to the rules of the Alliance. There are various services in the VIP area. Cultivators who need them can go in and take a look. Whoosh! As soon as the Heaven Celestial stage expert in charge of the aircraft finished speaking, there was an uproar in the cabin. Most of them were like Chun Hao, young people who had never experienced such a big event. Some middle-aged and elderly people were more calm. They closed their eyes and rested in their seats or comprehended their unique skills. Isn't this too much? It's fine if there's no independent space, but we can't even enter the second world. How are we supposed to live? That's right. The second world signal should be provided. Everyone, I'm very sorry. In order to save costs, the Alliance can only do this. These are the services and fees of the VIP area. If you need them, you can go to the VIP area. The old man seemed to know that there would be complaints. After he calmly said this, he disappeared. At the same time, a giant display screen appeared at the front of the cabin, listing out the various services. This time, the cursing and swearing became even more intense. Expensive. It was 100 times the price of any high-class place in East Flow City. Even the captain and vice-captain were depressed. But for the sake of face, they still stood up and walked towards the VIP area. Some young disciples also stood up after being depressed for a moment. But those that dared to walk into the VIP area numbered less than 300 out of 1,000 people. Moreover, the vast majority of them were young people. The reason was simple. At the same cultivation realm, their combat strength was about the same. Naturally, the older one was, the poorer one would be. The younger one's status, whether it was in a sect or family, would be much more important. Naturally, they would have more wealth. There were over a dozen young disciples that were clearly peerless geniuses like Chun Hao. They stood up with arrogant expressions. Chun Hao followed the flow of people and walked in. Although he didn't care about this small amount of money, he still felt as if he were being slaughtered like a fat sheep. What he hated the most was that there wasn't even a signal to open the second world. That didn't consume much energy. Without a doubt, this was to entice everyone to spend money. Hello, may I ask what service you need? Ah, it's you? Haha, how come you're here? I'm sorry, Mr. Chun. Because, I'm sorry. The waitress's face flushed red and she stuttered as she spoke. She lowered her head, not daring to look at Chun Hao. She had a helpless look on her face. She wanted to explain, but in the end she didn't. There were 50 young waitresses and waitresses at the service counter, that was about 300 feet long. All of them were at the peak of the later stage of the human celestial stage. Chun Hao followed the nearly 300 cultivators, and walked in front of a female attendant who was in charge of handling the service. She had just finished with the person in front of her, and was politely sending him off with her gaze. So Chun Hao didn't pay any attention to her. However, he didn't expect that when the female attendant saw Chun Hao, she actually cried out in surprise and covered her mouth. At this time, Chun Hao was a little surprised to recognize this young waitress. Wasn't she the little girl that he had mistaken for Long Ting in the East Stream restaurant? Oh, congratulations. You must have been promoted, right? I'm sorry about last time. What's your name? Chun Hao said with a smile and didn't ask further. It's okay. My name is Fan Xiaoqing. Mr. Chun, what service do you need? I can help you. Fan Xiaoqing? In this East Stream city, there are only Fan Xiaoqing. It's very rare. A top-level room. If there are any more, please help me with it. Ah. Top level room. It's very expensive. Mr. Chun, can you change it to a normal one? The cost of a normal one is 10 times lower, but the function is not much different. What surprised Chun Hao was that Fan Xiaoqing transmitted her voice to him. She seemed to be worried that he would spend too much money. This wasn't something that she should do as a waitress. It's okay. I'll take the top-level one, Chun Hao said casually. Oh. Fan Xiaoqing bit her lips and looked at Chun Hao with a strange look. She lowered her head even more. She seemed to be very nervous and reluctant to take Chun Hao's wealth card and help him with it. Chun Hao was a little confused, but he didn't want to ask further. He said a few more words because he had hugged her by mistake and felt a little embarrassed. What Chun Hao didn't know was that when he left the counter and walked towards the top-level room, the waitress, whose face was still red, took a deep breath and closed her eyes. She looked like she was praying sincerely. After a few seconds, she started to process the rest. Sir, this way please. When Chun Hao held the room token and walked through the door of the VIP area, a middle-aged man in the Heaven Immortal stage with a smile on his face cupped his fists and bowed to Chun Hao, making an inviting gesture. This surprised Chun Hao. Could it be that because of the high cost, even the waitress became a divine immortal? He had seen attendants at the human celestial stage and the earth celestial stage. But a heaven celestial? That was too exaggerated. If a heaven celestial were on the Wuxia star, he would definitely be a powerful figure. But in this aircraft, he was just an attendant who received guests. Chun Hao looked at the middle-aged divine immortal who was leading the way and shook his head slightly. Then he followed him into the maze-like passageway with many twists and turns. Sir, this is your room, which is also our top-level room. On the tea table in the living room, there is a high-class service that can only be consumed in top-level rooms. If you need it, just press the service button and let me know. High-class service? Heh, you will understand when you see it. If you need it, just let me know. I won't bother you anymore. Well, okay. Chun Hao replied and walked into the room. He spent 100 times the price, but the space wasn't very big. However, the decorations were very luxurious, and the room contained a dense amount of heaven and earth aura. To be able to do this in an aircraft, it was indeed very costly. Moreover, there were various complicated and high-level runes, which gave off a weak but profound aura of the law of heaven, which was even rarer. Phew, it's finally quiet. I have been flying in the chaotic space for half a year, which is just enough time for me to practice in the second world. Chun Hao said with a long sigh. As he spoke, he walked slowly to the tea table and sat comfortably in the armchair. Then, he waved his hand and picked up the so-called high-class service document. Chapter 664. Fuck. Chun Hao was curious and wanted to see what the so-called high-class service was. He opened the first page and his eyes widened. He was so shocked that he almost threw the manual to the ground and cursed. This is the flying machine of the Alliance Center. It provides this kind of service? This is too exaggerated. Chun Hao could not believe what he saw. This fucking high-class service was a blatant erotic service. Even though Chun Hao only saw the first page and did not read the contents and instructions, he was sure that this was the legendary service. Because the first page was a picture condensed by the white jade crystal. It was a young girl with a graceful figure and a pretty face. That alone was not enough to explain the problem. The most important thing was that the young girl in the picture was only wearing a thin veil. Her curvaceous body was faintly discernible. Her high breasts and the two obvious pink and tender bumps were visible. Then there was the lush black triangular jungle area. Although it was covered by the translucent veil, it was like looking at flowers in the fog. It was not clear, but it was definitely revealing. Moreover, the person who made the picture book obviously knew the psychology of men well. The revealing was just right. This was no doubt more tempting than being completely naked with no secrets to speak of. It was the essence of hugging the pipa and covering half of the face. Even Chun Hao, although he was shocked, his eyes were attracted by the picture. Naturally, he had the arousal that normal men would have. Even though the girl in the picture was not on the same level as Chen Shui and the other girls. Phew. Luckily, I am a righteous and pure person. If not, I would not be able to resist the temptation. Fan Xiaomei? This name. Chun Hao saw the name under the picture and was slightly stunned. He thought of the girl that he hugged just now. That girl is called Fan Xiaoqing. This is called Fan Xiaomei. Could it be? Thinking of this, Chen Hao quickly flipped to the second page. Sure enough, it was another picture of a beautiful woman. However, after Chen Hao saw that the name was Pan Xiaolan, he flipped to the third page, then the fourth page. Names that started with the word Fan Xiao kept appearing. Finally, when he reached the ninth page, Chen Hao stopped flipping through the pages. His gaze stopped on the girl's face in the picture. Fan Xiaoqing. As expected. Chen Hao shook his head and said, "No wonder she didn't want me to stay in the best room. She was embarrassed to let me see." Thinking of how Fan Xiaoqing lowered her head with a red face, not even daring to look at him, and then thinking of how Fan Xiaoqing raised her head and gave him a weird look after he confirmed that he wanted the best room, Chen Hao didn't understand and didn't think too much about it, but now he understood how Fan Xiaoqing felt. To put it bluntly, although he and Fan Xiaoqing met by chance, it was obvious that his hug made Fan Xiaoqing treat him as an acquaintance. And now, what she was going to do was undoubtedly something that she didn't want any acquaintance to know. Fan Xiaoqing still has the body of Yuanyin. This should be her first time doing it, right? Chen Hao shook his head again. It had to be said that even if they met by chance, they didn't have any feelings for each other. But seeing such a decent girl fall into his trap, Chen Hao still felt a little regretful. Although this kind of thing existed on Earth and in this world in his previous life, and it wasn't rare. But no matter in his previous life or this life, Chen Hao wouldn't enter such a place. In his previous life, many times when he wanted to vent, he would choose the target himself, and use huge benefits to exchange for it willingly. There were a total of 20 pages of pictures of beauties. Chen Hao wasn't in the mood to read the rest, so he directly flipped to the section with the explanation. After reading the explanation, Chen Hao frowned slightly. At the same time, he couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. The truth was a little different from what he imagined. These 20 girls didn't betray themselves willingly, but they were slaves against their will. I see. If I didn't see it, then it's fine. But since I saw it, then I'll help her. After reading the explanation, Chen Hao closed the information and muttered to himself. A drop of water should be repaid with a spring of water. As for that girl, although there was no debt of gratitude between Chen Hao and her, but he rashly hugged her, so it was considered a good karma. If he didn't help, it wouldn't be in line with Chen Hao's character. Beep beep beep. Thinking of this, Chen Hao didn't hesitate anymore, and directly sent a stream of energy into the service call button. After a while, the heavenly immortal expert from earlier appeared in front of Chen Hao. "Mister, have you seen it? Which one do you like? No matter if the others choose it or not, you can have priority," the middle-aged man said with a smile. Originally, he didn't have high hopes for Chen Hao. This was because when Chen Hao and the other cultivators entered the aircraft, he was already looking for a target. Even when he saw Chen Hao, he was extremely surprised. This was definitely a top genius that could be called a monster in the vast universe galaxy. Even if such a young disciple was purely venting, he wouldn't just casually look for an ordinary girl. As long as they were willing, there were many more excellent girls for them. Why would they lower their status? Therefore, when he received Chen Hao's paging, while he was surprised, he also directly mentioned the treatment that others wouldn't be able to enjoy. "I like number 9 Fan Xiaoqing. I want to know, other than the service described in the explanation, is there any other way to redeem her?" Redeem her? The middle-aged man was instantly surprised. Mister, I'm sorry. These 20 girls are all genius disciples that our Fan family has been cultivating since young. Although they are slaves, they are not ordinary slaves. The cultivation treatment that they enjoy in the family is better than most of the direct descendants. They are also one of the future power reserves of the family. Redeeming her is out of the question. You can name any price you want. Mister, I'm really sorry. This isn't a matter of price. It's beyond my authority. The middle-aged man was very surprised. Fan Xiaoqing's information had already been detailed in the explanation. Whether it was her beauty or talent, she wasn't the most outstanding among the 20 girls. She could only be considered above average. However, this monstrous genius youth actually chose her. Not only did he choose her, he even wanted to redeem her. That name any price made him extremely tempted. However, he knew that these 20 girls, no matter what price, the family head would definitely not sell them. Is there no room for negotiation? You can report to your superiors and ask. You can name any price you want. I can guarantee that the price that I can afford will definitely allow you to cultivate dozens, or even hundreds of fan Shaoqing. This, I can ask, but I can't guarantee success. This matter can only be decided by the family head of the fan family. If you want to contact him, it will take time. How long will it take? I'm not sure. It depends on whether the family head is in seclusion. Mister, can you let Fan Shaoqing come over first? With your super talent, the service fee is only 1 million immortal essence crystals. If it takes too long, it will be hard to avoid being taken away by others. All right, let her come over. Give me an answer as soon as possible. All right. What Chen Hao didn't know was that the Heavenly Immortal Realm Master was just giving an excuse to save face for Chen Hao. Before he came, he had already received orders that no matter how high the price was, Fan Shaoqing and the rest would not sell them. The main reason for providing services was to be able to dual cultivate with the top geniuses and obtain the special benefits that only geniuses could get. Of course, it wasn't as simple as just letting Fan Shaoqing and the rest get the benefits. Just like how the Valley of Happiness was able to become one of the top sects on the Ya'ing planet, their promiscuous cultivation method was disdained by many pure and honest cultivators, but it was undoubtedly an extremely perverted way of cultivation. Once they practiced dual cultivation, they could more or less obtain some of the other's special supernatural powers and special understanding of the heavenly Tao. Even the extremely difficult to improve comprehension could be stimulated. Although this promiscuous method was a little indirect, it still had a considerable effect. To put it bluntly, Fan Shaoqing and the rest were just the mortal elixirs that the Fan family prepared for their genius disciples. The so-called mortal elixirs were slaves that were cultivated from a young age. There were both males and females. The more talented they were, the better the treatment they would receive. After stepping into the peak of the advanced stage of the immortal realm, it was time for them to start using the mortal elixir. The mortal elixirs who maintained their Yuanin and Yuanin bodies could usually be sold for a good price after their first Yin and Yang fusion. Just this income alone could basically make up for the cost of cultivating them. However, the first time was not something that anyone could buy. If one wanted to buy it, one had to be a genius cultivator. The more talented one was, the lower the cost. It could even be free. This was because the families that had the ability to cultivate mortal elixirs were basically powerful families that had reached the point where immortal essence crystals were just a bunch of numbers. What they really needed was the comprehension of the heavenly Tao, comprehension, and special supernatural powers that the mortal elixirs obtained from their genius disciples. Because of this, the more talented the buyer was, the lower the price. However, most of the mortal elixirs were women. The ratio of mortal elixirs to men was less than 1/10. This was an inevitable phenomenon in the world of male supremacy. After all, if a woman cultivated with the mortal elixir, it would be very difficult for men to accept her. For example, if the Fan family let the Fan Donglu use a male mortal elixir to cultivate, which genius disciple would want to be her cultivation partner? The Yuanin body was very important in the eyes of any man if they were to be his cultivation partner. As for Fan Shaoqing and the rest of the 20 girls, regardless of appearance or talent, they could only be considered average. To be exact, they were confined to the peak of the advanced stage of the immortal realm. At this time, it was time to use them. If they could meet a super genius who could benefit them greatly and help them break through to the Earth immortal realm, then they could continue to cultivate according to their own methods. When they could no longer rely on themselves to break through, they would start to cultivate with other genius disciples again. Chapter 665. But they couldn't be sold like now, and they even had to pay for it, because they no longer had the body of primordialine. Only after countless times of dual cultivation, when they really obtained some of the skills and insights that the genius disciples in the family needed, would they be able to display their usefulness and become the dual cultivation partner of the genius disciples. After making the best use of everything, those who were lucky and strong would become the lowest class in the family, Those who were poor would become the death warriors, and those who were miserable would become the cultivation partner of the lower class in the family. It could be said that the fate of the human Dan was even more miserable than that of a normal slave. Of course, there were also special circumstances. If the human Dan's talent became stronger and stronger, and reached the level of heavenly immortal, then they would be able to escape the sea of suffering, and become the upper class in the family. Unfortunately, this situation was very rare. "Hello, what service do you need?" "The lounge," a young cultivator said. The lounge was the cheapest service in the VIP area. In fact, it was just a slightly spacious seat. The only difference was that it was connected to the signal of the second world, and this was also the choice of 70% of the 300 cultivators who came in. "Oh please. I say, miss, you haven't returned me my wealth card." "Ah. I'm sorry. Fan Xiaoqing quickly apologized and returned the wealth card to the cultivator. Ever since Chun Hao had moved into the best room, she had been distracted. The handsome young man who hugged her by accident, who didn't have the arrogance of a super genius, and who even apologized to her, had left an indelible impression on her. It wasn't that she wished for anything, and she didn't dare to wish for anything. Just by looking at the two girls who were 100 times more outstanding than her, she knew that she couldn't leave any mark in his heart. But that didn't mean that she couldn't fantasize, and couldn't turn that accidental encounter into a beautiful memory. And when they met again, he greeted her with a smile and even asked for her name, which made her feel an indescribable joy. However, Chun Hao chose the top-class room. What did it mean for such a genius young man to enter the top-class room? It meant that there would be information about her placed in front of Chun Hao. Even though Chun Hao didn't care about her at all, she didn't want the youth who had left her with an indelible impression and fantasy to find out that her lowly identity was dirty. That was why she plucked up the courage to suggest that Chun Hao stay in a normal room. Unfortunately, because of this, she secretly prayed that Chun Hao, who was full of righteousness, would not look at the information and find out that she was dirty. Not for anything else, he just hoped that even if he didn't leave an impression, he couldn't leave a dirty impression. This kind of subtle thinking could be said to be the only pure land in the hearts of people like her, the spiritual sustenance. Ordinary people simply could not understand their desire to look up to heaven from hell. They knew that there was no hope, but they would always give themselves a wisp of beautiful fantasy, because this was their courage to live on and their spiritual sustenance. Just a moment ago, she received another message that pointed at her. What made her absent-minded was that it was actually him. At this moment, she was uneasy and thought of many things in an instant. There was the disappointment of being found out, but there was also the excitement of being pointed by Chun Hao. At the same time, there was also the disappointment of knowing that Chun Hao would point people. That made the perfect figure in her heart be tainted with flaws. However, there was also a kind of expectation. Perhaps he only pointed at her when he saw her? If she wasn't in it, he wouldn't know how to point at all. At the same time, she was also looking forward to his talent. He was only at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage, but he had a powerful aura that surpassed most of the geniuses at the peak of the later stage of the Earth's celestial stage. If she sold herself to him, then she believed that she could rely on the fusion of her soul and flesh to gain a great harvest. She could definitely step into the Earth's celestial stage easily. With what she gained, she could even cultivate and break through to the heaven celestial stage. If she could really do it, maybe she could. Although it was still difficult, but the final outcome would definitely be a shocking change. This might be the turning point of her life. Although her life was still under the control of the Fan family. Fan Xiaoqing, you can stop processing now. Come with me. Just as Fan Xiaoqing was still immersed in shock and complicated thoughts, the middle-aged man in the heaven celestial stage appeared at the entrance of the VIP area, and directly transmitted his voice to her. At this moment, there weren't many cultivators who were still processing the service. She should have stopped after it was completely over. However, the middle-aged man in the heaven celestial stage asked her to stop in advance. It was enough to show how much he valued Chun Hao. For such a genius, not to mention the 1 million immortal core crystals that he quoted, as long as the other party frowned, he would immediately lower the price. He would even dare to make it free. Because of Chen Hao's talent. If he knew that there was such a genius here who had such a hobby, then the Fan family wouldn't have arranged for a human pill like Fan Xiaoqing's. Instead, it would have been a supreme human pill. Manager. Fan Xiaoqing anxiously came to the middle-aged man's side, bowed and said, "Follow me." Yes. Fan Xiaoqing wasn't immediately brought to Chen Hao's room. Instead, she was brought to a secret room by the old man. Fan Xiaoqing, this young man's talent, even in the entire vast universe galaxy, belongs to the top category. I only have one request for you. That is to unconditionally satisfy all of his requests. Do not reject. Make full use of this half a year and dual cultivate with him as much as possible. Do you understand? Understood. Fan Xiaoqing said with a red face. If she knew that this day would come, and that she couldn't change it or resist, she would have accepted her fate. No matter who it was, she couldn't reject. She could only listen to the arrangements. This was the mission that she had been taught since she was young, the mission of a human pill. And now, to be able to meet him twice, and to have a little bit of interaction with him, a youth that she could only dream of was her first man. To her, this was definitely the perfect beginning. She didn't need the manager to tell her what to do. Also, if he asks about redeeming myself. Redeeming myself? Yes, I don't know what this young man sees in you. He actually wants to redeem your freedom. Unfortunately, the human dawn that the Fan family has nurtured have never been redeemed. With the Fan family's wealth, it is impossible for them to redeem the human dawn that they have spent so much effort on. This is impossible, you only need to say so. Alright, go. Yes, dong. Dong. Dong hiss. When the door was knocked, Chen Hao opened the door. Fan Xiaoqing lowered her head, her hands tightly clasped together, bowed and said, "Mr. Chen. Hello. Come and sit." Chen Hao pointed at the chair in front of him and said, "Xiaoqing doesn't dare." Fan Xiaoqing replied softly. She didn't dare to sit in front of Chen Hao. Trembling, she knelt beside Chen Hao, lowered her head, pursed her lips, and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Perhaps it was because of her nervousness, her chest was obviously moving up and down. Seeing Fan Xiaoqing like this, Chen Hao frowned slightly and said, "Fan Xiaoqing, don't misunderstand. You and I have met twice, it's fate. I saw this." Chen Hao pointed at the advanced service manual and said, "I want to help you. You are a slave of the Fan family. You should be able to redeem yourself, right? Mr. Chen." Fan Xiaoqing looked at Chen Hao, shook her head and said, "We are not normal slaves. Redeeming ourselves is impossible. No matter how advanced a slave is, there is a price, right? Can't I give you 100 times the price?" Chen Hao said. This is not about the price. We were raised by the Fan family since we were young. Rendan. Mr. Chen, I appreciate your kindness. Fan Xiaoqing paused and looked at Chen Hao, mustered up her courage and said, "If Mr. Chen really wants to save me, please take me." Chen Hao frowned and said, "What does Rendan mean?" Fan Xiaoqing knew that she had to face it. So, even though she was trembling, she explained to Chen Hao about Rendan, and the reason why the Fan family would not let them redeem themselves. What made Chen Hao even more conflicted was that the only way he could help Fan Xiaoqing was to dual cultivate with her, and let her get the most out of it. That was the only way for Fan Xiaoqing to have a glimmer of hope. Seeing that Chen Hao was frowning and not saying anything, Fan Xiaoqing finally understood that Chen Hao did not want to dual cultivate with her. He just wanted to redeem herself. After understanding this, Fan Xiaoqing felt that this was normal. Why would a genius like him do something like this? Even though she was a little disappointed, Chen Hao's image in her heart was once again perfect. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Chen. My fate is like this. You don't have to worry about it. I don't want Mr. Chen to be criticized because of me. Thank you." Fan Xiaoqing stood up and bowed to Chen Hao again. Then, she quietly walked to the door. "Wait. Go to the cultivation room first," Chen Hao suddenly said. "Mr. Chen. It's okay. There's no need to criticize me. I'll try again. If it really doesn't work, I'll dual cultivate with you," Chen Hao said with clear eyes. As he spoke, he waved his hand and sent Fan Xiaoqing, who still wanted to decline, into the cultivation room. Then he activated the restriction from the outside. At the same time, he sent out another stream of energy to press the service button. As a man, it would be fine if he did not want to help her. But since he wanted to help her, he would help her and see it through. Dual cultivating with a girl that he had only met twice and who was not outstanding to him. Even though it was a little awkward, it was much better than his previous life where it was purely an exchange of benefits. Plus, he was helping her and there would be no repercussions. What was so good about it? Moreover, he was confident that he could redeem her. Chapter 666. Mr. Chun, what can I do for you? I haven't been able to contact the head of the family yet. A moment later, the middle-aged man appeared before Chun Hao once again. I'm sorry, I didn't think this through. The Fan family is the #1 family in East Flow City. I want to redeem Fan Xiaoqing, but no matter how high the price is, I'm afraid you won't be interested in it. How about this? Just tell the head of the Fan family that 500,000 cubes of supreme-grade spirit spring is the most I can offer. If it's still not enough, then I'll just forget about it. To be honest, this Fan Xiaoqing is a very ordinary person even among the 20 people. Whether it's her looks or talent, she's nothing to me. The only reason I want her is because she looks exactly like my dead first love. This. The middle-aged man in the Heaven Immortal realm was shocked by Chun Hao's words. He was so shocked that he was speechless. 500,000 cubes of supreme-grade spirit spring. What kind of concept was that? If it was immortal vitality crystals, the Fan family could completely ignore it. However, supreme-grade spirit spring was in high demand in the entire cultivation world. Especially for a big family like the Fan family, they all had expert craftsmen. Supreme-grade spirit spring could be said to be the key to determining the number of supreme-grade spirit treasures, and even divine instruments in a big family. Even if they could get 10,000 cubes at once, it would be a huge gain for the family, let alone 500,000 cubes. However, Chun Hao wanted to use 500,000 cubes of supreme-grade spirit spring to exchange for Fan Xiaoqing's ordinary elixir. When they heard this condition, the heavenly immortal could not help but wonder if there was something special about Fan Xiaoqing that they had missed out on. However, that was impossible. Fan Xiaoqing had been raised by the Fan family since she was young. There were no secrets to speak of, therefore, when Chun Hao said that she looked exactly like his dead first love, he immediately thought of Chun Hao as a lunatic who was obsessed with love. Only a lunatic like this would pay such a frightening price for a woman who did not benefit him at all. To be exact, it was only to relieve him of his loneliness. I'll wait for your news. Oh, okay. But Mr. Chen, can you let me appraise the quality of your supreme-grade spirit spring? That way, when I report to the head of the family, it'll be easier for me to explain. Sure. Hiss. Chun Hao directly brought out a top-grade spirit spring wrapped in genuine, and appeared in front of the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man frowned and pondered for a few minutes. Finally, he looked at Chun Hao and said, Mr. Chun, please wait. I'll try to contact the family head. If it doesn't work, I'll contact the higher-ups. It should be quick. Looks like there shouldn't be a problem, Chun Hao thought to himself. He should have known that such a large family would not be moved by his so-called price. In reality, even though immortal essence crystals were a common currency amongst the top clans, powers, and upper echelons of the cultivation world, not many people cared about it. That was merely a pile of numbers. It was not that they had so much wealth that they could not spend it all, but that celestial essence crystals were simply unable to buy the things that they wanted. However, his supreme-grade spirit spring was different. In the past 3 years, he had sold it several times. Each time, it was in small quantities, but the price had risen terrifyingly each time. This also made Chun Hao even more aware of how scarce supreme-grade spirit spring was in the cultivation world. This was also the reason why Chun Hao was extravagant, and did not care how much he spent. He only wanted to enjoy the top-grade spirit spring. As his cultivation level increased, the amount of supreme-grade spirit spring would eventually become a vast ocean. In fact, if one wanted to obtain supreme-grade spirit spring, they basically had to exchange for Dharma treasures and spiritual items of the heaven and earth of equivalent value. If they directly sold it for celestial essence crystals, Unless it was a lucky poor person who accidentally obtained supreme-grade spirit spring, no one would sell it for celestial essence crystals. Sure enough, in less than 10 minutes, the middle-aged heavenly immortal quickly came over. As Chun Hao expected, the other party agreed immediately. When Chun Hao handed over the storage ring with 500,000 cubic meters of supreme-grade spirit spring to the other party, the middle-aged heavenly immortal, who was obviously still in the second world, directly sent a message. At the same time, Fan Xiaoqing, who was hiding in the cultivation room and still feeling uneasy, suddenly screamed and widened her eyes in shock. Immediately, she cried tears of joy, because the slave rune imprinted in the depths of her soul suddenly collapsed and disappeared. She who had obtained the human core had finally become a normal person who had obtained freedom. When a person was young and insensible, they could be carefree. However, as they grew up and came into contact with more and more people and things, they would understand themselves more and more. They would also understand that their fate was arranged by others and they could not resist it. No one could be carefree. He could only work hard for his slim chance of survival. Until now, what was her slim chance of survival? It was to offer her body of vital yin to a genius young man, and then rely on her own strength to break through to the earth immortal, heaven immortal in fact. Until now, her slim chance of survival no longer existed. However, what she did not expect was that she actually obtained freedom so easily, just because of a young man that she had met twice. She knew that he must have paid a huge price to make the impossible redemption possible. Other than being grateful and touched, what else could she do? She had nothing to repay him with. She was even willing to be his slave. But she knew that no matter what she did, she would not be able to repay such a huge favor. Chun, Master, bang. When Chun Hao opened the door of the cultivation room and entered, Fan Xiaoqing, who was crying tears of joy, knelt on the ground with a bang. Get up quickly. It's not a big deal. You don't have to be so courteous, and you can't call me master. Looks like the soul slave seal has been broken. From now on you are free. Chun Hao smiled and sent out a stream of energy to help Fan Xiaoqing up. No, master. After being helped up, Fan Xiaoqing knelt down again with a bang. I, Chun Hao, from now on, am willing to be your slave for all eternity. I will serve you, Master Chun Hao. Heaven is my witness. If I violate this contract, my soul will be destroyed, and I will never be able to reincarnate. Every word was clear. But Fan Xiaoqing spoke at an astonishing speed. She even brought out her soul. And with her soul as a guide and the world as a witness, she signed a soul contract that left Chun Hao dumbfounded. Even Chun Hao could not stop her. Originally, when he helped her up and saw her kneel down again, he thought that this might be the only way for her to express her gratitude to him. Therefore, he did not stop her. Otherwise, he would not accept it and would make her feel uncomfortable. However, he did not expect. At this moment, even in the cultivation room of the aircraft, the world shook. Endless mysterious aura directly penetrated the aircraft and enveloped Fan Xiaoqing without any resistance. At the same time, a strand of soul aura fused into Chun Hao's forehead without allowing him to resist. Master, please don't break the contract. Otherwise, this servant can only repay you with my life. This servant knows that in Master's eyes, this servant is insignificant and can't be considered anything. However, this servant can only repay Master's kindness by doing this. Hiss. Fan Xiaoqing pressed her hand on her head. The surging energy was swallowing and swallowing. If Chun Hao refused, it would immediately destroy her soul palace. The shocked Chun Hao looked at Fan Xiaoqing, who was kneeling on the ground and looking at him with determined eyes. He was speechless and had a headache. What was this? Master, I beg you, please take me in. Your talent is not bad. You can join a decent sect. Why do you have to do this? Master, I am now called Chun Xiaoqing. I just want to follow you. This is forcing me to. Chun Hao scratched his head. He did not know what to say. Sorry. If you want me to die, I will die now. Since things had reached this stage, this was Fan Xiaoqing's only choice. First, she had to repay Chun Hao's kindness. Although she had once again become Chun Hao's slave, Theoretically speaking, she had also lost her freedom. However, voluntarily and being forced were two completely different things. How could someone who had spent so much to save her treat her the same way as the Fan family? Similarly, she, who had suddenly regained her freedom, was terrified. She felt that the world was so big, but there was nowhere for her to go. She did not know what to do in the future. Therefore, her thoughts were simple. She would serve Chunhao like a cow or a horse. No matter how Chunhao treated her, she was willing to do it. Master. Just as Chunhao was feeling conflicted and depressed, the old god, who had become a taciturn gourd, suddenly spoke. This girl's potential is not only on the surface, you have picked up a treasure. What do you mean? The so-called mortal Dan are all nurtured from a young age. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have any dissatisfaction towards their own fate. Instead, they would think that this is what they should do. This is their destiny, a destiny filled with glory and unparalleled glory. You mean she has been brainwashed? Yes. Although I have not seen other human Dan, but I can conclude that no one is like her. People who have been brainwashed from young can maintain their consciousness. However, no one can maintain their true consciousness like her. Because of this, they would have a conflict with their fate. Even if they wanted to fight back, they would not be able to do so. In her soul, she has always maintained a pure land, fighting against the fate of becoming a human Dan. This also caused her, who should have been a supreme grade human Dan, to become a normal human Dan. Chunhao was deep in thought. Old God's words were very clear. In other words, because this girl had always maintained her true consciousness, she had lost the pure state of mind to work hard for her goal. This was like the two sides of her soul fighting in her mind. This caused her talent, understanding, and determination to be severely suppressed. Chapter 667. If that was not the case, she would not be stuck at the peak of the later stage of the human celestial stage. The only explanation was that Fan Xiaoqing's soul and state of mind were extremely tough and strong. Otherwise, she would have been brainwashed successfully and lost her true consciousness. Now, she has regained her freedom and is willing to follow Master. The things that bound her heart have been removed, and her state of mind has undergone a metamorphosis. There is no doubt that she will be able to unleash a cultivation talent that is much stronger than before. I think, Master, you should. Old God paused slightly as if he was hesitating whether to say it or not. According to its principle, it would not interfere with any of Chunhao's decisions. But now, Old God realized that Chunhao's greatest strengths and weaknesses were all focused on love and women. They were the things that motivated him the most, but at the same time, they were the things that bound him the most. The reason was simple. From Chunhao's point of view, from the moment his soul merged with his soul in his previous life, he no longer had the body of Yuanyang spiritually. And when he was forced to do it with Tantai Lian, he lost the body of Yuanyang spiritually and physically. In other words, no matter how hard Chunhao tried to hold it in, the combination of yin and yang of the women would not have much effect on him. Unless it was someone like Long Ting who had used the Nirvana pill and relied on the medicinal properties of the Nirvana pill to bring about a stronger fire of desire, then the effect would be greater. Don't be agitated. Let me think about it. Now calm your mind and wait for me. Chunhao communicated with Old God in his mind. At the same time, he looked at Fan Xiaoqing and said. After that, he walked out of the cultivation room. What should I do? Chunhao asked in his mind. It was not the first time that Chunhao had seen Old God stuttering. Every time it happened, it meant that Old God had reached the end of his patience. Only then would he speak to remind him. Take her. Since I'm already involved in this, do you think I should just watch her die? It's just that it's a headache. Old God, to tell you the truth, I've found that women have a great influence on me. Many times, things don't go as I wish, and they're all on the same side. Damn, it's really a headache. Chunhao said in his mind. Master, you're overthinking things. To be exact, you can't let go when it comes to women. You're obviously moved, but you're afraid. You always have too many misgivings. If you could do as you please, then these problems would be trivial to you. Everyone knows the logic, but to really do that, I can't. I can't do it. You are naturally dissolute and have great luck with women, Fuck, I was born pure, okay? Since when have I ever been flirty? That's because you have too many misgivings, and it just so happens that you have a strong willpower. That's why you're in such a deformed state. Old God no longer had any misgivings, and said mercilessly, deformed state. Old God, can you watch your mouth? Furthermore, if you continue, it will only get worse. Until now, let me give you a rough estimate of how many women you'll have in the future. The first woman who made you fantasize was Xiao Mei of the Xiao family, right? After the soul purification. She still exists clearly in your heart, right? Back then, you had already accepted her in your heart, but because you didn't say it out loud, and later on, when you saw Xiao Mei and Xiao Feng confirm their relationship, you suppressed these feelings. Am I right? Yes. I feel that I didn't do anything wrong. You gave up and didn't investigate the reason, but Xiao Mei still persisted, and even rushed out of the secular world. When you saw her again, you wanted to understand, but you suppressed it, right? Yes. This is one of the things that's bothering you. If I'm not wrong, you must have encountered something related to Xiao Mei in the illusion test in the second world. The reason why you did that was because you had Xia Yuyu, Helian Wuxi, and Tantai Lian. You had misgivings, right? Yes. Xia Yuyu was the first one who moved you easily. Helian Wuxi, you couldn't let go, and you struggled for a long time before you accepted her. Tantai Lian, you had no choice but to accept her, but the premise was that you had a heart. Then Chen Shui, you were moved by her elegance, and coupled with the special relationship between you and your god siblings, it could be said that they were a conduit, and gave you the biggest reason, and the only one that you didn't struggle with. Then the Lung sisters, you struggled with many things, and you even created the identity of your god grandfather. But later on, you couldn't let go, and you used the reason that they saved your life. As for Long Ting, what you need to convince yourself is that you feel like an old friend at first sight, her looks, and the help she gives you when you need it. Most importantly, she takes the initiative. These aren't big problems. Cough cough. Chen Hao was speechless at Old God's words. He had to admit that Old God, who had grown up with him, definitely knew him well. Every sentence could be said to be to the point, and he couldn't refute it even if he wanted to. Including your sister Xiao Yan, it wasn't a big problem, because you could find reasons to convince yourself and the other girls. Cough cough. My sister and I. Forget it, you can continue. To put it bluntly, there's a cause and there's an effect. Among any of them, let's not talk about whether you were merciful in the first place, because that's meaningless, but you were merciful either intentionally or unintentionally. This is what I meant when I said that you were naturally dissolute. Coupled with your charm and great luck with women, you have a fatal attraction to the opposite sex. This led to the current situation. Why don't you stop being merciful? If you do, you have to be prepared for trouble. Of course, the so-called trouble is under the premise that you can't do as you please. Take this girl for example. You just hugged her by accident, and maybe you didn't have any thoughts about it. But you, who are naturally dissolute, after meeting her again, you wanted to help her. That's why it's like this now. It does seem like things don't go as planned as you said, but if you didn't have a naturally kind heart towards women, how could this situation have happened? Moreover, you also said that if you really can't redeem yourself, it doesn't matter even if you help her. You feel that way because deep down, you know that after you help her, she won't have anything to do with you, won't trouble, and won't have to face the other girls. But I can be sure that once you help her, you won't let another man taint her. In the future, you will definitely help her. Cough cough. Let's talk about that Bailey Ningbing. She does have a reason not to kill, and she doesn't deserve to die, but if it was a man, would you let her live? Would I? There's no reason to kill her. Even if it was a man. You just didn't want to kill her at all. Otherwise, even if there's no reason, you can still find a reason. You know it's impossible, but you can still do it. You've done such things many times. When it comes to men, you can kill decisively. When it comes to women, unless it's someone who really threatens your bottom line, you're kind-hearted. You'll always unconsciously exonerate them. And, enough. Don't say any more, let me be alone. All right. Old God replied. and took the initiative to enter the depths of Chen Hao's mind. What he said today would undoubtedly have a huge impact on Chen Hao. Old God had wanted to say these words for a long time, but he held it in until now. This was because he underestimated Chen Hao's determination and stubbornness in love. Chen Hao took a deep breath and calmed his fluctuating emotions. Chen Hao had already sensed that old God had hit the nail on the head. To be exact, when he entered the second world for the test, he already knew. The illusory realm he encountered during that test had almost shaken his heart. It also made him understand that one day he would have to face it. He had always been searching for a solution, but he had never been able to do so. But now, old God didn't hold back in the slightest. He knew that old God was right, and he should have done so, but it just so happened that, at this moment, Chen Hao's mind once again flashed with various scenes of the past. Every woman, every detail, appeared in his mind like a movie. He comprehended, pondered, searched, immersed himself in it gradually. The various scenes he encountered in the illusion automatically appeared in Chen Hao's mind. The combination of reality and illusion caused Chen Hao to be unable to extricate himself once more. 1,000 enormous flying machines in the chaotic space were arranged in 3 lines, forming a majestic flying machine army. At the very front, in the East Flow City's number 1 flying machine, which was 3 times larger than an ordinary flying machine, Long Ting and Chen Shui were in a separate sealed space. Aha! Little Shui, this is the One Yang Nirvana pill. You're really interesting. It's great to have you as a companion. Ha! Eat, quickly eat. Long Ting, who was covered in sweat, directly sent the fiery red pill she had just successfully refined into Chen Shui's mouth without even bothering to bottle it. Although Chen Shui had already decided to eat it, seeing Long Ting's mischievous appearance, she couldn't bear it. He snatched the spirit herb and sent a wisp of his consciousness into it to sense the profound mysteries within. Within the sparkling and translucent pill, there was a wisp of blood energy that made Chen Shui's heart palpitate. Eat, don't look. I'll help you condense a seal, lest you make a mistake. If I become Brother Hao, I'll be miserable. How could that be? Naturally, my body contains Chen Hao's blood essence. If your willpower is too weak and can't withstand a single blow, no matter how weak my willpower is, I'll still be stronger than you. Chen Shui directly swallowed the pill in one gulp. Long Ting laughed complacently. At the same time, what made Chen Shui frown was that the aura on this girl's body had suddenly changed. No, to be precise, the aura of Chen Hao's blood essence that was hidden within the pill in her body was suddenly emitted. How could this girl be so shameless? How could Chen Shui not understand what Long Ting wanted to do? Without a doubt, it was a blatant temptation. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 668. Once Chen Shui flared up, she would have to endure the pain of burning her body and burning her spirit by herself. This was a test for her, not to mention that Long Ting had even stimulated Chen Hao's blood essence to tempt her. Little Shui, I'm doing this for your own good. Don't look at me like that. If there's a first, then there's a 15th. When it flares up, see what I'll do to you. Chen Shui glared at Long Ting and said without any temper. After she finished speaking, she closed her eyes and prepared to welcome the upcoming challenge. The Nirvana pill wasn't used exclusively by Long Ting. Even though it was also used on Chen Hao, according to Long Ting's words, the effect wasn't big. Because her time with Chen Shui was staggered, she was late by the time of 4 pills. She believed that Chen Shui could persist until she completed the Nirvana pill in advance. At that time, she only needed to give Chen Hao continuous Nirvana pills that contained Chen Shui's blood essence. When Chen Shui couldn't persist anymore, yin and yang would fuse. The tempering of Chen Hao wasn't the slightest bit less. Only, the tempering of Chen Hao was far from being as intense as Long Ting's first time. This wasn't just a matter of time, but after the first time, the effect of this tempering on Chen Hao would be very weak. Precisely speaking, Chen Hao only became the antidote, and the one who was truly tempered was only Chen Shui. But one thing was for sure, and that was through this medicine, Chen Shui would be even more unswerving towards Chen Hao. Not long after, Chen Shui flared up. What caused Long Ting to be slightly surprised was that Chen Shui actually displayed a willpower that exceeded her expectations. She forcefully endured the first basic flare-up after the pill entered her body, without even looking at her. After all, she had pushed Chen Hao's blood essence to the limit and approached Chen Shui's side, almost hugging her, but she didn't see the slightest thing that she wanted to see. Amazing, amazing. Little Shui, your willpower is really firm. I'm ashamed of my inferiority. What a powerful medicinal effect. Chen Shui, who was drenched in sweat, opened her eyes, but didn't pay attention to Long Ting and muttered. Her mind was even more immersed in the shocking improvement brought by the first baptism of the One Yang Nirvana pill. Of course, this is a secret technique contained within an ancient artifact. How could it not be powerful? Long Ting said, hee. I'm still waiting for you to molest me. Let me see how you look when you're naked. Dream on. If you want to find balance, you have no hope. Chen Shui found more and more that Long Ting, this fussy woman, was speechless. It was obvious that she was still brooding over the fact that she had seen her naked appearance. However, the more it was like this, the more harmonious her relationship with Long Ting became. Now it's your turn to teach me that absolute art. Alright, I'll tell you the method. You can study it slowly, Chen Shui said with a faint smile. After she finished speaking, she directly condensed a strand of divine sense and merged it into Long Ting's forehead. After a while, Long Ting screamed and directly pounced towards Chen Shui. Amidst Chen Shui's complacent laughter, the two of them started fighting. Facing Long Ting, who had an abnormal physical body, Chen Shui was obviously not Long Ting's match in terms of pure pinching. However, when Chen Shui's aura suddenly changed into that of a man, Long Ting was actually unable to bear it psychologically and retreated to the side in defeat. I'm not playing with you anymore. I'm going into the second world to take a look. Little Shui, give me your communication number. It's useless even if I give it to you. Right now, I'm in the second world and I'm completely isolated from the outside world. Chen Shui said. Then just change your identity and enter. Chen Hao did that. And why isn't he here? Could it be that he changed to a new one? As Long Ting spoke, she had already entered the second world. However, after contacting all of the accounts that Chen Hao had contacted her, there was no response. This situation lasted for an entire month. There was still no response. Hiss hiss hiss, in the room that Chen Hao was in, for an entire month, Chen Hao maintained the same posture as a month ago. He did not move at all. His eyes were open, but his pupils were no longer in focus. The aura around his body also emitted a strange, pure spiritual fluctuation. This spiritual fluctuation was formless and intangible, but it stirred up a cool breeze in the entire room. However, his posture moved slightly, but the current him was like a completely different person compared to the him from a month ago. Whether it was his aura or his appearance, all of them had undergone an unbelievable change. His aura did not become stronger, but had changed. Although it was not a fundamental change, but if it was not someone like Chen Shui or Long Ting who was really familiar with him, they would definitely not be able to recognize him through his aura. His spiritual energy was also worlds apart from his peak state a month ago. If he was a blooming flower a month ago, then now he was a withered leaf. He only needed a gust of wind to drift down and turn into dust. His appearance, the change was even greater. His originally jet black hair had now turned white. Even his pair of sharp eyebrows and the beard that had grown automatically over the past month were now snow white. If not for his skin and life aura still maintaining a youthful appearance, he would most likely be mistaken for an old man by anyone. Of course, his life aura was still young, but at this moment, it was much weaker than a month ago, and it was still weakening. Now she could only be considered as an old-looking youth, a youth that was getting weaker and weaker. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. At this moment, the door of the cultivation room had long been opened. The young girl who had already changed her name to Chen Xiaoqing silently knelt in front of Chen Hao, her mouth constantly muttering the three words, I'm sorry. Originally, Chen Hao had asked her to wait in the cultivation room, to wait for him to think about it, to wait for him to make a decision. But in her apprehension, after continuously waiting for a few days without any movement, she finally could not bear the torment in her heart and wanted to come out to take a look. But the scene that she saw when she came out made her aghast. Almost at a glance, she could confirm that Chen Hao had entered the demonic barrier. The so-called demonic barrier was a situation that any cultivator would encounter on the path of cultivation. However, everyone's demonic barrier was different. It could be said that there were thousands of demonic barriers, just like when Tantai Lian had fallen into the illusion of reality when she came out from planet Jian. That was also a type of demonic barrier. However, as long as it was a demonic barrier, it could only be jumped out by oneself. Any external force was useless. It could be interrupted, but no one knew what the consequences of the interruption would be. Therefore, as long as the other party's breath of life still existed, they could only wait patiently. Chen Xiaoqing was very clear that the lowly and insignificant her was definitely not the root cause of Chen Hao falling into the demonic barrier. However, she could feel that Chen Hao falling into the demonic barrier, more or less, should be related to her. At least, she should be the fuse that made Chen Hao think of something, which caused him to fall into the demonic barrier. Otherwise, it could not be so coincidental. Moreover, Chen Hao said that he needed to think about it, and asked her to wait. Originally, she thought that it would not be long before Chen Hao would be able to jump out of the demonic barrier and return to normal, but this wait was close to a month's time. She looked on helplessly as Chen Hao's jet black hair and eyebrows turned white little by little, and she looked on helplessly as Chen Hao's breath of life became weaker and weaker. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have forced you. I shouldn't have been insatiable. I shouldn't have pushed my luck. You saved me and gave me freedom. That's enough, that's enough." Chen Xiaoqing's eyes were already red and swollen. Even though she was at the human celestial stage, her body had already become numb after kneeling in front of Chen Hao for close to a month without activating her true core strength. If she could do it all over again, she would never force Chen Hao to follow by his side. Perhaps to Chen Hao, she was just a burden, wasn't she? Why did she force it? Why was she greedy? Unfortunately, at this moment, she could only wait and pray that Chen Hao would jump out of the demonic barrier before his breath of life was completely exhausted. If he still couldn't do it at the last moment, then she could only take the risk of interrupting Chen Hao's demonic barrier. Only God knew what the result would be. When the demonic barrier jumped out by itself, it was a transformation and improvement of the state of mind. If it was interrupted, some people would only be slightly affected, or even not affected at all. It was just that they didn't succeed in crossing the demonic barrier. However, they still escaped from the demonic barrier, and would have to face it again in the future. However, some people would become demented directly. When they woke up, they would still be sober in the demonic barrier and couldn't extricate themselves. That was a fool. If that was the case, it would be extremely difficult to recover. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. Chen Hao's breath of life was getting weaker and weaker. His essence, qi, and spirit were as weak as an ordinary person. Chen Xiaoqing's mood became heavier and heavier. She became more and more regretful and anxious. After kneeling on the ground for a long time and staring nervously, her eyes had turned blood red. However, at this moment, swish! A strand of light suddenly escaped from between Chen Hao's eyebrows. Ah! The moment she saw the strand of light, Chen Xiaoqing let out a cry of surprise. There was movement, which meant Chen Hao's consciousness had been awakened. In other words, Chen Hao was going to successfully cross the demonic barrier. Ah! However, a second cry of surprise followed immediately. This was a cry of pure surprise. Damn! If something bad happens to my master, I will destroy you directly. Itoda, who was at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage, said fiercely as he stared at Chen Xiaoqing fiercely. At this moment, he was many times more powerful than when he had just obtained Guanu's body. Although Guanu's soul hadn't been destroyed, Itoda's soul had been completely integrated with his body. As long as Guanu's soul was destroyed, the integration would be completed immediately. You, who are you? Chen Xiaoqing couldn't believe her eyes. If she hadn't seen him appear from between Chen Hao's eyebrows with her own eyes, she would have regarded Itoda as an enemy. How could Chen Hao, who was at the Earth's celestial stage, have a living person in his mind? This was a real living person, not a primordial spirit. Why do you care who I am? Swish. Swish. Brother E, forget it. It's useless to be angry with her. Hey little girl, get up quickly and go to the cultivation room to recover to your peak state. Yeah, let's go, let's go. Chen Xiaoqing was so surprised that she couldn't speak. It was surprising enough that a living person had appeared. Now 2 ancient divine beasts had appeared in front of her. No, to be exact, 2 ancient divine beasts had appeared in front of her. Chapter 669. A vermilion bird and a black tortoise. Although the 2 mythological beasts had shrunk their bodies by 1,000 times, the strong aura of ancient mythological beasts was still there. The black tortoise's golden body was one of Chen Hao's gains from the mysterious ice realm. As a mortal core cultivator from the number 1 family in the vast universe star, Chen Xiaoqing's knowledge was definitely more profound than the cultivators of the limitless star. How could she not recognize them? At this time, Chen Xiaoqing's only thought was that her new master was far more monstrous, more powerful, and more mysterious than she had imagined. It was normal for the 2 mythological beasts to be able to live in Chen Hao's mind, but a living person was not a mythological beast. Even if they had recognized their master, they should not be able to live in Chen Hao's mind. Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and recover, Ito Ta said fiercely. I'm sorry. What's the use of saying sorry? I'll let you recover. Recover to your peak state, and be ready to sacrifice yourself for master. Ito Ta's character was obviously more fiery, and he did not care about anything. The vermilion bird and the black tortoise were relatively shrewd. After the 2 of them had reconstructed their golden bodies, the special inherited memories of the ancient mythological beasts had begun to awaken. Although they were not the real ancient mythological beasts of the ancient mythological beasts, and could only be regarded as the descendants of the ancient mythological beasts, the awakening of their inherited memories made them smarter than ordinary people. Because of this, the 2 of them did not speak ill of Fan Xiaoqing. As the saying goes, things are different now. What if Fan Xiaoqing's status rose? Yes. Although Chen Xiaoqing was still in shock and did not understand the situation, he knew that this fierce cultivator meant that he had to recover to his peak condition before he could help his master. Even though he said sacrifice, Chen Xiaoqing did not hesitate at all. Hiss! Chen Xiaoqing channeled his quintessential essence through his legs, which were completely numb from kneeling, and floated directly into the cultivation room. Immediately, Itoda, vermilion bird, black tortoise, 1 man and 2 beasts looked at each other. And at the same time, they released a gentle energy, as if the entire space was cut into a piece. Without disturbing Chen Hao at all, they took Chen Hao, who remained unchanged, and floated into the cultivation room. Chi. In an instant, streams of flowing light began to revolve around the cultivation room under the cooperation of 1 person and 2 heads. Immortal core crystals, origin stones, and precious ores that had been purified slowly condensed and constructed complex and mysterious runes. Chen Xiaoqing didn't know what runes they were condensing, but he knew that it was definitely for Chen Hao. Therefore, she only paid attention to it for a moment before she focused her mind and entered a state of full recovery. It took a full hour for Ito Ta, vermilion bird, and black tortoise to turn into a stream of light at the same time and enter Chen Hao's glabella again. Crash! At the same time, under old god's control, rolling spiritual spring water flowed out from between Chen Hao's eyebrows, instantly drowning Chen Hao and Chen Xiaoqing. Chen Xiaoqing. Just as Chen Xiaoqing was disturbed by the spiritual spring and her mind was in shock, old god's old and heart-stirring voice suddenly sounded in Chen Xiaoqing's mind. Master has fallen into the demonic barrier of the love of the 7 emotions and the 6 desires. This is Master's greatest inner demon. Although the main cause is not you, it was touched by you. Now, I want you to sacrifice yourself for Master. Are you willing? Willing. I am willing. As long as I can save Master, this servant is willing even if I can never be reincarnated. That's great. When the formation is activated, Master's inner demon illusion will appear before your eyes. If you see yourself, that will be the time for you to sacrifice yourself for Master. As for what to do, when you see the illusion, you will naturally understand. Yes. Although Chen Xiaoqing didn't know who the old voice in her mind was, she responded without hesitation. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. Division commanders and commanders of Donglu City. Those who have not yet logged into the second world, please log in immediately and receive the message. In the independent space, Chen Shui and Long Ting suddenly sensed the notification and fluctuations from the independent space's barrier and immediately heard the notification from the aircraft manager. Receive the message? It should be information about the other 9 galaxies or the primitive secret realm. Log in and take a look. Chen Shui had already tempered herself to the peak of the initial stage of the Earth celestial stage. As she couldn't contact anyone at the moment, it was useless for her to log in to the second world. Therefore, she had not logged in. As for Long Ting, she only logged in once every 1 or 2 days to see if she could detect Chen Hao's aura. In these 2 months, Long Ting was a little puzzled that Chen Hao still hadn't appeared. However, she didn't care too much about it. In these few years, Chen Hao had not contacted her for a few months or even half a year. Now it had only been slightly more than 2 months. Chen Shui and Long Ting did not hesitate and logged into the second world. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. Continuous notifications were heard. There were more than 100,000 of them, and each of them indicated that the sender was from the vast Universe Galaxy Alliance. The title of each message indicated the race, combat strength ranking, and name. There are so many messages. This is obviously the introduction of the top 10,000 elites from the other 9 tribes. What are the other 10,000 messages? Long Ting and Chen Shui, who were in 2 different places in the second world, as well as the cultivators who had just received the news, quickly opened the first message, then the second, the third. Every time a message was opened, the image of the foreign race expert that the message introduced would appear in the mind of the cultivator. Moreover, just like the real person, the image exuded a powerful aura. At the same time, a set of numbers would be marked above the image. What does this set of numbers mean? Just as everyone was puzzled, an explanation automatically appeared next to the numbers. It turned out that this was the combat strength of the cultivators from the 10 galaxies who had entered the primitive secret realm. The highest combat strength was 10 million. Phew! What a powerful aura. It's just an image and it's already so powerful. A combat strength of 9,600,000. If I were to meet him, I would have to avoid him. He must be much more powerful than Moling Takshu. Long Ting looked at the Wing Tribe's number 1 elite, Wu Hen, in shock. She then flipped to the 2nd, 3rd, and 10th ranking of the Wing Tribe. After that, Long Ting stopped looking at the Wing Tribe and switched to the Bug Tribe, followed by the Dark Demon Tribe, Spectre Tribe, Elf Tribe, Succubus Tribe, Protoss Tribe, Heavenly Fiend Tribe, and the most complicated tribe in the 10 galaxies, the Tyrants. The Tyrants were the most complicated because they gathered members from the 9 major clans and countless other minor clans. It could be said that the Tyrants had cultivators from all the different clans. They welcomed everyone, regardless of which clan you were from. If you couldn't stay in your original clan and wanted to leave, the Tyrants were the best choice. Basically, it was an alliance of traders from all the major clans. Of course, the Tyrants had existed for hundreds of millions of years. Most of the cultivators were born and raised in the Tyrants. The Tyrants were so powerful that they had no feelings for the tribes that they belonged to. In their historical records, their ancestors were oppressed and persecuted by their original tribes. That was how they became members of the Tyrants. Because of this, the conflicts between the Tyrants and the other tribes were undoubtedly the most intense. Similarly, because the Tyrants contained the pure bloodlines of various tribes, they had spies all over the other tribes. It was impossible to guard against them. Therefore, they were also the most well-informed. There were pros and cons. For the same reason, the well-informed Tyrants were also the easiest for the other tribes to infiltrate. It was impossible to guard against them. The direct result of this situation was that there were no secrets among the 10 galaxies. Especially for a large-scale operation like the primitive secret realm, the Tyrants had become the transit station for information. The Tyrants had planted a large number of spies in the other tribes. They obtained first-hand information and sent it back to the tyrants. The tyrants then passed it on to the cultivators who participated in the operation. The spies among the cultivators from the other tribes were also sent back. This process repeated several times and was constantly perfected. What secrets were there to speak of? The Protoss, the Bug tribe, and the tyrants are so powerful. There are dozens of them with combat power above 900. In terms of top elites, the other tribes can't be compared to them at all. The top 10 in the Divine Temple should have combat power of 9 million. As for the rest, it's impossible. Beep, beep, beep. Just as Long Ting, Chen Shui, and all the cultivators who were above the commander rank were checking the situation of the 9 tribes, they received a message from Red Target Awakening. You can check your combat power through this message, and compare your combat power to know your position. Ah, this is not bad. All the human cultivators chose to check their combat power after receiving this message. 3,465,702? Only this much? Xiao Shui, have you checked? How much is it? After checking her combat power in the second world, Long Ting felt immense pressure. In the spaceship, her real body in the independent space looked at Chen Shui and asked, 3,140,000. Chen Shui said with a serious expression, I've seen that the other 9 races who can enter the top 10,000 have at least a combat power of 3,500,000. I guess they're the same as you, at the level of a commander. That's true. Let's take a look first and sense our aura. We should know our general situation. The combat power should be determined according to the aura in the second world. Mine is definitely not necessarily higher than yours by a little, hehehe. You're older than me. Chen Shui glared at the smug Long Ting and said, Older? Xiao Shui, don't exaggerate. I'm only 5 years older than you. Even if I'm older than you by a few decades, we're still the same age. How dare you say that I'm older? I'm so angry. Chen Hao still hasn't contacted me. I wonder what his combat power is. I estimate, at least 4 million. 4 million. This test is just for reference. It's not very accurate. I didn't say that his real combat power is only 4 million. Look at how excited you are. Long Ting looked at Chen Shui's expression and said, Chapter 670. That's more like it. Chen Shui said. Then she frowned slightly and said, Little Ting, it's been more than 2 months and he hasn't contacted you. I feel something is wrong. What's wrong? He used to not contact me for months. But it's different now. Even if his real body enters the second world, he doesn't have to worry about anything. Even if he's fighting in the second world, he should let us know. That's true. But don't worry. Nothing can happen in the aircraft. When we reach the entrance of the primitive secret realm, we will definitely see him. Okay. The two of them talked for a while, then they started to open the messages one by one and imprint the information in their minds. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you know what's going on. If they met in the primitive secret realm, they could make a decision quickly. Remember, you have to enter his illusion with your real body. Blend the real with the illusion and break the illusion. Oh. You have to be gentle, you have to be meticulous and guide the movements in the illusion. 2 days ago when Chen Shui, Long Ting, and the others received the news, there was a knock on the door of Chen Hao's top-class room in the aircraft. Unfortunately, there was no response. At this moment, the cultivation room was completely closed. Under the guidance of Old God, Itoda, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise had set up a mysterious array together. It was overflowing with spring light, and it was very charming. Chen Xiaoqing tossed and turned under the ferocious and powerful attack. She gasped for breath and moaned uncontrollably. She was in pain but happy at the same time. But she held on to a trace of clarity in her mind, and the last words of the old voice echoed in her mind. The so-called sacrifice she thought was dying for Chen Hao, but she didn't expect it was just sacrificing her body. The mysterious array seemed to be connected with Chen Hao's mind and soul. All kinds of emotions and desires that surged in Chen Hao's mind made Chen Xiaoqing shocked. Although she wasn't the person involved, she almost lost her mind. The illusion that was full of joys and sorrows. the impermanence of gathering and dispersing, the venting of desires and so on, could be expressed incisively and vividly with just a look and a movement. It was full of confusion. In fact, if it wasn't for the protection left by the old god, Chen Xiaoqing would have fallen into it at the beginning, let alone waiting for an opportunity. The reason was very simple. Even though she wasn't the person involved, she'd already given her soul to Chen Hao. Moreover, she'd given it to him willingly. She was willing to be a slave for all eternity and give up everything for Chen Hao. Therefore, the situation of Chen Hao in the image would make her feel moved finally. When Chen Hao's breath of life was getting weaker and weaker, almost to the point of dying, Chen Xiaoqing grasped the rhythm of Chen Hao's illusion and took the initiative to attack. Although the female lead in the image was not her, but a girl who was much more beautiful and powerful than her, she didn't care at all. As long as she could help Chen Hao, everything was worth it. Originally, it was just an illusion. Chen Hao's body remained unchanged like a statue, and he didn't move at all. But as Chen Xiaoqing took the initiative to attack with a blushing face and coordinated with the movements in the illusion, gradually, the real and the illusion merged into one. Chen Hao's real body naturally moved the same way as he did in the illusion. Chen Xiaoqing, on the other hand, was trying to capture the woman in the illusion and maintain the exact same posture as her. So, there was the scene of the room full of spring just now. After the real and the illusion merged into one, Chen Hao, whose breath of life and spirit were weak to the extreme, automatically began to recover. The energy of heaven and earth in the top-grade spiritual spring that filled the entire space began to be absorbed by Chen Hao's body at an amazing speed. This meant that although Chen Hao did not get out of the demon's barrier, his soul and mind had established a connection with his body. To be exact, his mind was drifting out of the demon's barrier little by little. Finally, when Chen Xiaoqing could no longer control herself and let out a high-pitched moan, Chen Hao's movements became crazier and more ferocious. At this moment, the illusion and reality were separated. In the face of the surging and continuous attack, Chen Xiaoqing's mind was blank. After an unknown period of time, she finally fainted. But Chen Hao still did not stop, nor was he able to enter the state of spiritual and physical integration. He was still immersed in the demon's barrier, maintaining the same posture and the same movements as him in the illusion. And Chen Xiaoqing, who fainted, became a little sheep at his mercy. She was dying and coming back to life. Hiss. For hours later, the scene changed and they entered the next illusionary realm. Peng. It was also at this time that Chen Xiaoqing was released by the unconscious Chen Hao. She fell heavily to the ground and collapsed on the ground. Buzz. At the same time, the divine thoughts left in Chen Xiaoqing's mind shook slightly, and Chen Xiaoqing, who was sore and weak, woke up. Chen Xiaoqing abruptly opened his eyes, and when he saw that he was standing proudly like a lively dragon and not moving again, he felt slightly relieved. At this moment, Chen Hao's hair, eyebrows, and beard had once again become a shiny black color. He was full of energy and vitality, and his life aura was majestic. Moreover, he was even stronger than when he was in his peak state before he fell into the demonic barrier. Obviously, Chen Hao's abnormal automatic recovery ability and the nourishment of Chen Xiaoqing's vital yin had allowed him to reach a higher level of enlightenment. And Chen Xiaoqing, who had lost her vital yin, was extremely weak and lost her luster because she did not enter the state of spiritual and physical integration. Chen Xiaoqing, you did a good job, but you have to hold on. Calm your mind and start to recover. As long as there is an illusion of yin and yang blending, you have to be like this time. Don't worry about what I see. I'm not a human being at all. I'm just Master's device spirit. So you don't have to worry. Yes. Suddenly hearing the old voice of the old god again, Chen Xiaoqing subconsciously covered her breasts and private parts, feeling uneasy and ashamed. Fortunately, the old god explained, which made her feel a little relieved. Time passed day by day. Chen Xiaoqing could not remember how many times she had been knocked out by Chen Hao, nor could she describe her feelings, but she knew that she had to continue, until Chen Hao got through the demon's barrier. Whether it was her, the old god, the treasure-hunting sword spirit, Itoda, or the others, The only thing they were worried about was that Chen Hao still could not get out of the demon's barrier when the aircraft arrived at the primitive secret area. If that was the case, Chen Hao would lose the opportunity to enter the primitive secret area, unless they woke up Chen Hao. But even the old god did not dare to wake up Chen Hao directly. The only hope was that Chen Shaoqing could persist until Chen Hao's desire was really satisfied in the demon's barrier, and enter the state of spiritual and physical integration. Only then could Chen Shaoqing wake him up. But based on the current situation, it seemed that the overly sensitive Chen Shaoqing would be conquered by the ferocious Chen Hao very quickly and be tortured to death. Of course, the most important thing was that the old god did not want to wake Chen Hao up. Instead, he hoped that Chen Hao could get through the demon's barrier in one go. Even if he entered the primitive secret area later or did not enter at all, it was worth it. As an ancient spiritual treasure, he knew that after entering the primitive secret area, with Chen Hao's strength, luck, and the treasure-hunting sword spirit that could unleash a stronger ability, as well as the cultivators of the 9 great clans and the internal cultivators of the human clan, it was an excellent opportunity for Chen Hao to gain experience in all aspects. But in the eyes of the old god, Chen Hao's emotional barrier was more important than anything else. It was just that Chen Shaoqing had to suffer. Illusions continued to appear. Helian Wuxia, Xia Yuyu, Tantai Lian, Chen Shui, the beautiful sisters of the Lung clan, Long Ting, and even Xiao Mei, all of them appeared one after another. Every time, Chen Shaoqing would be filled with anticipation and fear at the same time. Only when the beautiful sisters appeared at the same time would she only watch. There was no other way. The beautiful sisters were both appearing at the same time. Chen Shaoqing still had no way to split herself into two and substitute Chen Hao into one of reality and illusion, so she could only watch. But from beginning to end, Chen Shaoqing herself did not appear. The illusions were like a realistic representation of the future. They looked like individual illusions, but as time passed, all the illusions seemed to be connected together. Chen Hao's sister, Chen Yan, also appeared. But in the illusions there was no romantic scene. Chen Yan's ending was that she left sadly. Even though there was no sound and only an image, Chen Shaoqing could tell that Chen Yan's expression, actions, and mouth shape in the illusions had dealt a huge blow to Chen Hao in the illusions. Every woman, to be exact, brought harm to Chen Hao in the end, or even killed. The origin of the illusions was because of Chen Hao's misgivings and inner demons. Every time, Chen Hao would feel a heart-wrenching pain as he allowed his opponent to leave, or allow his opponent to kill him. Wrong, it was all because of her, wasn't it? 5 months later. What made Chen Shaoqing almost scream was that she actually appeared in the illusions. It was the first time she had appeared. Everyone, we will reach the entrance of the primitive mystic realm in 10 days. The primitive mystic realm will open in about a month. Everyone, please adjust yourselves to peak condition. Everyone. A few months ago, the spacecrafts had become a huge army. In the entire mission, the 50 legions had gathered together. There were a total of 500,000 spacecrafts densely packed together. At this time, the voice of the controller of the aircrafts could be heard from every aircraft. The chaotic space they were in now was extremely dark. There were no star fragments or light. There was only a raging space storm. The defense systems of the aircrafts were fully activated to resist. Similarly, in the depths of the chaotic space far away, there were also huge aircrafts in other directions. Chapter 671. East Flow City Flying Ship 1. It's been 5 months. How infuriating. He hasn't contacted me in such a long time. If I didn't know that nothing could have happened to him in the flying ship. Long Ting was like an ant on a hot pan. She had completely lost it 2 months ago. How could it be like this? Long Ting could understand not contacting him for 2 to 3 months, or even half a year. But now he was about to enter the primal mystic realm. After obtaining the information, let alone Long Ting, even the strongest person of the human race this time felt like a mountain was pear. But Chen Hao hadn't contacted her for an entire 5 months. This was too outrageous. I think he should have something. Although Chen Shui wasn't as impatient as Long Ting, the worry in her eyes was even stronger than Long Ting's. Something? What could it be? I don't know. But if it wasn't something, he wouldn't have not contacted us for such a long time. Whether it's you, me, or Xiao Wu and the others at this time, it's impossible that he didn't tell us something. He just finished his training. If he were to enter the second world, he would definitely be training in the arena or training grounds. There's no reason for him not to contact you. The only possibility is that he didn't enter the second world. Could it be that he couldn't bear to spend? That's impossible. Long Ting frowned. They had their own independent space and could enter the second world at any time. But they had also heard that in the entire East Flow City, only the cultivators above the rank of captain could receive such treatment. The other flying ships all had to be paid for. But with Long Ting's understanding of Chen Hao, there was no reason for him to be unwilling to spend. Immortal origin crystals were just a pile of rubbish to him. As long as he wanted to, he could instantly wipe out the top families. Let's comprehend. I can't think of any other reason. It's already been 5 months. We're about to reach the entrance of the primal mystic realm. Forget it. When we arrive, we can still find him without entering the second world. Long Ting is ranked 154. Bailey Ningbing is ranked 161. And Long Yi is ranked 389. The Long family is really powerful, and they're at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth Celestial stage. Just based on their battle strength, Long Yi will definitely become a disciple of the temple. Bailey Ningbing is also powerful. The small limitless planet has completely changed its fortunes. Yes. Chen Hao from the Wuji star hasn't checked his combat power yet. But since he passed the test and got the qualification to enter, he must be very strong. That's for sure. In just 3 to 4 years, he was able to advance to the Earth Celestial stage and didn't join any forces. He must be quite awesome. However, compared to Bailey Ningbing, he's definitely lacking. The results of the preliminary test will indeed differ from the real situation. Things like luck and opportunity can't be determined through the test. Bailey Ningbing entered the Perpetual Life sect first, and then became a disciple of the Divine Temple. Her luck is unparalleled. She's just a little worse than Long Ting's. Otherwise, she wouldn't be weaker than Long Ting. What's the point of discussing him? No matter how strong he was now, he would still die in a few years. There's no doubt about it. In World 2 in Yang City, in the center of the Alliance, enormous pagoda steels 3,000 meters wide and 300,000 meters tall appeared in all of the public squares. The steels were covered with glittering golden names. Only the names at the bottom of the pagoda steels were gray. All the names on the steels were golden. Behind the names were the eye-catching combat strength value, cultivation level, force they belonged to, and place of origin. Almost all of the names were from planets that were in the same area as the Yang star. Only a few were not from the Yang star, but they had set off from the Yang star to participate in the primitive mystic realm. 99% of the forces they belonged to were also under the Yang star's rule. Even Chen Hao's name was at the bottom of the pagoda steels. The reason was that he hadn't checked his combat strength value in World 2, so he wasn't ranked at the moment. It could be said that the names on the pagoda steels belonged to all the cultivators from the Yang star who had participated in the primitive mystic realm, as well as all the outsiders who had participated in the primitive mystic realm from the Yang star legion. For example, Chen Hao and Long Ting's names would appear in World 2, Yang City. Similarly, their names would appear in East Flow City, where he was, and Golden Harbor City, where East Flow City was a part of. He would be listed on the pagoda steels in all 3 places. Cultivators like Chen Hao, Long Ting, Long Yi, and Bailey Ningbing, who hadn't set off from the Yang star, would be listed on the pagoda steels as long as they had been born within the Yang star's territory. Only about 1% of the Yang star legion's army of 10 million people, which was about 100,000 people. The most eye-catching people were precisely this 1% or so. This was because the forces they belonged to were basically the top forces in the vast universe galaxy. The most eye-catching people were undoubtedly the experts sent by the Sacred Temple, who were above the rank of commander. The Sacred Temple had sent 222 disciples who were above the rank of commander. Long Ting and Bailey Ningbing were the only 2 Sacred Temple disciples who didn't belong to the Yang Star Legion. Long Yi was a disciple of the Death Door sect, and also didn't belong to the Yang Star Legion. However, the names of these three people were frequently mentioned in the crowd. Of course, when the three of them were mentioned, Chen Hao would be mentioned. However, Chen Hao's affairs were no longer a secret on the Wuxia star. Until now, no one believed that Chen Hao would be able to survive the appointed battle in 10 years. At the same time, every city in the second world was bustling with noise and excitement. Countless cultivators, regardless of whether they were human immortals, earth immortals, or celestial immortals, had gathered in huge squares at the center of the alliance. However, this was only a small commotion. Once the primitive mystic realm was officially opened, it would definitely be unprecedentedly lively. When the time came, a huge pagoda steel thousands of miles tall and tens of thousands of miles long would appear. It would be the overall ranking of the 500 million cultivators in the human army. The ranking wouldn't be a ranking of combat strength, but a ranking of the contribution points each cultivator had earned to the human race. It would also display the main deeds they had done in the primitive mystic realm, such as the foreign races they had obtained and killed. In addition, important news would be transmitted to every cultivator in the second world from time to time. This was a grand event that would shake the entire world of cultivators regardless of their realms. It was a grand event to win Chi luck. Moreover, it wasn't just the human race. The other 9 groups also used their own methods of information transmission to announce all the news in the primitive mystic realm, including every person and every event. In a square in Yang City, 2 middle-aged men stood proudly among the crowd. Although one of them had concealed his aura, the surrounding cultivators, including the masters of the Heaven Immortal stage, felt that he was unfathomable. The other middle-aged man's aura was slightly weaker, but he was also a master of the Heaven Immortal stage. Junior brother's name is still Gray. Senior brother. Is junior brother not going to check his combat strength? Or is he still worried about something? I don't know the reason either. However, when we last communicated, I felt that he wouldn't be worried about anything. Based on the image in the second world, I can confirm that his combat strength is definitely around 4 million. The peak of the initial stage of the Earth Immortal stage. Around 4 million. Doesn't that mean he's more powerful than most of the cultivators who are at the same level as the group leaders? That's the truth. Second junior brother. Our junior brother. I have a feeling that in less than 10 years, this time, the primitive mystic realm of the Earth Immortal stage, his name will be known throughout the entire world of cultivators. The world of cultivators in the 10 galaxies. If that's the case, won't the Valley of Happiness be alerted? At that time, they will definitely hire an invincible Heaven Immortal. Second junior brother. If our youngest junior brother can cause a sensation in the world of cultivators in the 10 galaxies, do you think the Divine Palace will sit by and watch him die in the hands of an invincible Heaven Immortal? We'll see when the time comes. Let's go. We'll come again when the primitive mystic realm opens. Okay. These 2 people were the first and second disciples of the patriarch of the Wuxia sect, Chen Hao's eldest senior brother, Gu Chen, and his second senior brother, whom he had never met or contacted before. Similarly, before Gu Chen and his second senior brother came, Guan Nanchao and Lu Qingyang, the 2 big shots of the Wuxia sect, also came to see the pagoda steel. Guan Nanchao was delighted to see Bailey Ningbing, who was high up in the air, and he felt extremely honored. Seeing that Chen Hao still didn't show his combat strength, they were also confused. However, they also knew that once Chen Hao checked his combat strength, it would be more dazzling than Bailey Ningbing's. This was the reality that Guan Nanchao had to admit. As for the people from the Happy Valley, they were still in the dark. They only knew that Chen Hao, who had disappeared for a few years, had made shocking progress and passed the test to obtain the qualification to enter the primitive mystic realm. Seeing that Chen Hao's name still didn't show his combat strength, they only felt disdain in their hearts. They thought that Chen Hao was still worried about them. However, their only worry now was that Chen Hao had obtained some great opportunity in the primitive mystic realm. When that time came, it would attract the attention of the Divine Temple, and they would intervene. That would be bad. However, this was only a slight worry. After all, although Chen Hao's progress was shocking, and he was able to pass the test at the initial stage of the Earth Celestial stage, He was definitely a figure in the vast universe galaxy's genius guild. However, among these cultivators who were basically at the peak of the advanced stage of the Earth's celestial stage, his strength couldn't be that high. At the very least, he was far inferior to Long Ting and Bailey Ningbing who had entered the Divine Temple. Unfortunately, if they knew that Bailey Ningbing had been trampled by Chen Hao after entering the Divine Temple, they wouldn't think so. Chance. Chen Xiaoqing, this is our chance. A chance to help him break through his demonic barrier. Ah. Remember, start with the illusion. No matter what, persist until your body and soul merge with the illusion. Once your body and soul merge, follow the illusion and cooperate with him. However, in the end, you have to go against the illusion and treat him with your own heart. Not the way you treated him in the illusion. Do you understand what I mean? When he saw Chen Xiaoqing appear in Chen Hao's demonic barrier for the first time, Old God was excited and instantly seized the best opportunity to help Chen Hao break through his demonic barrier. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.